Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 204, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 204. Obito's words were laden with a seductive allure, but the content they conveyed made Nagato furrow his brows deeply. He lowered his head again to glance at the scroll in his hand, remaining silent. The scroll contained intel from the incident with the Nine Tails, a record of Yuki Yoru blocking attacks from Six Paths head-on. It explicitly stated that Yuki Yoru's current strength had reached levels nearly equal to the Sage of the Six Paths himself, surpassing even the former terrors of the shinobi world, Uchiha Madara, and the god of shinobi, Senju Hashirama. In the face of such a being, it was no wonder that even with his power restored to its peak and partial mastery over would release, Obito still thought Nagato stood no chance. Compared to the legendary Six Paths, even would release was merely a footnote. How feasible is this plan? Nagato's voice was low and deep, his Rinnegan gleaming faintly as he stared at Obito. And the Shikotsumyaku, isn't that a Kekkei Genkai from Kirigakure? You possess the Rinnegan, the natural heir of the Six Paths. Your success rate is very high. As for the Shikotsumyaku, Obito paused, then nodded slightly. Yes, it's indeed a Kekkei Genkai of Kirigakure's Kagaya clan. Its awakening difficulty is extremely high. Based on our intel, currently only a dozen or so members of the Kagaya clan have awakened the Shikotsumyaku. But I want you to focus on one in particular, a boy named Kagaya Kimimaro. He was born with the Shikotsumyaku, the strongest Kekkei Genkai user the clan has seen in a century. If you can take his ability and fuse with it, and combine it with the top-tier Sharingan and Byakugan I hold, your Kekkei Genkai fusion will immediately be pushed to the pinnacle. Don't make me laugh. Nagato let out a cold chuckle, directly cutting through Obito's lofty ambitions. You and I both know Kirigakure's current situation. With Yuki Yoru and the Soul Society involved, there's no way we could ever get our hands on a clan genius with an awakened Kekkei Genkai. I'll lure Yuki Yoru away. With your mouth. Konan snapped, showing no patience for Obito's claims. If Obito hadn't sent Nagato to the Land of Iron, she wouldn't have had to worry for him for so long. Though Nagato had not only recovered but also grown stronger, it was still due to exploiting the special properties of White Zetsu. And everyone knew what that meant. Obito shot Konan a cold glance. If not for a slight miscalculation, he would never have revealed this plan to Nagato and risked complicating matters. But he had no choice. White Zetsu detected that the special spore implanted on Fugaku had vanished. And just before it disappeared, it caught a final glimpse of Yuki Yoru. There was no doubt now. The plan to manipulate Uchiha Fugaku had most likely been exposed. Obito had to make backup arrangements and pull in more power. That's why he had come, to recruit Nagato, now restored and even stronger than before. Suna, Konoha, and Kiri have officially formed a joint infrastructure alliance and have already begun extensive development efforts. Once the situation with Kumo-gakure is resolved, I plan to host the Chunin exams under Sunagakure's name and invite Yuki Yoru to attend as a guest. Obito's voice dropped to a serious tone. At that time, all you need to do is keep Yuki Yoru tied up in Sunagakure. I'll infiltrate Kirigakure directly and steal the Shikotsumyaku. It was actually a pretty decent plan. A coordinated feint and strike. Kirigakure, after years under Yuki Yoru's leadership, was sure to be heavily guarded, especially with the Soul Society stationed there. A direct assault would be nearly impossible. But letting Obito use space-time ninjutsu to infiltrate was far more viable, and Nagato wouldn't even be the one infiltrating. Besides, Nagato, now not only fully recovered but even stronger than before, also wanted to see just how far he'd come. How much difference remained between him and Yuki Yoru? Was that man really, as Obito claimed, approaching the level of the Sage of Six Paths? This kind of inflated self-confidence was a natural consequence of a power-up. If Obito hadn't given him this reality check, Nagato would already be walking around like a newly awakened Mangekyo Sasuke, thinking he was invincible. Very well. I'll await your signal, Nagato said in a deep voice. All for our shared dream. Obito vanished in a swirl, taking Zetsu with him. Nagato stared impassively in the direction he disappeared, then turned back to the steel jungle of Omegakure beneath his feet. Konan spoke softly. That guy definitely has ulterior motives. He's up to something, Nagato. I know. But that doesn't mean he's wrong. If Yuki Yoru's strength is truly as he described, then the method Madara proposed may really be our only chance to realize our dream. We don't have a choice, Konan. But. Konan's beautiful face showed urgency. There's no but. Everything is for a better future, for our ideals, for our beliefs. Nagato stepped toward her, his voice quiet but unwavering. And for Yahiko. The situation between Konohagakure and Konohagakure, after nearly a month of simmering, had escalated even further. The fourth Raikage denounced Konoha on international shinobi broadcasts, accusing them of lacking sincerity. During peace talks, Konohagakure claimed that Konoha had made outrageous demands. After Konohagakure's delegation rejected those terms, they were reportedly detained by Konoha, with no updates since. If Konoha truly seeks negotiation and desires peace, then I demand the release of my Konohagakure delegation, let them return to their families. But if Konoha refuses, then we, Konohagakure, are prepared for war. The fourth Raikage's bold proclamation immediately stirred waves across the entire shinobi world. Most of the other major villages watched the drama unfold with glee, the louder, the better. Especially Iwagakure. That very afternoon, Inoki held a press conference, publicly condemning Konoha's actions. He pointedly reminded the world of the trauma Iwa had suffered during the Third Great Ninja War when Konoha unleashed the box of ultimate bliss. Public opinion surged like wildfire. Though Konohagakure had not officially declared war, their aggressive posture and manipulation of the narrative had clearly pushed Konoha to the center of the storm. Surprisingly, Konoha, usually obsessed with public image and reputation, chose to remain silent this time. That silence triggered speculation across the shinobi nations. Had Konohagakure's accusations hit the mark? Was Konoha really preparing for war? 2 weeks passed. The tension reached a breaking point. Finally, Konohagakure's fifth Hokage, Uchiha Fugaku, called for a world press conference. With a calm but commanding tone, he addressed the world. Konohagakure coveted Arkeki Igenkai. Under the guise of negotiations, they acted in secret, even attempting to sway a former Hokage to their side. If not for the sharp insight of clan leader Hayashi and the vigilance of the Hyuga clan, they might have succeeded. We of Konoha desire peace, always have. But we do not fear war. If Konohagakure wants to fight, then we will meet them head-on. Uchiha Fugaku's fierce declaration, combined with the shocking revelation, reignited public attention and flipped the narrative overnight. This time, Konohagakure found itself on the defensive. According to their intelligence analysts, Konoha was in dire straits, economically crippled, with declining ninja numbers and increasingly restless civilians. Under those conditions, not even a wielder of Mangekyo Sharingan should have had such confidence. And yet, Konoha's stance was not only unyielding, it was threatening war. The next day, Kirigakure held its own press conference. Their message was clear. The Tri-Nation Infrastructure Alliance between water, fire, and wind is a policy dedicated to peace and prosperity for our people. Any individual, organization, or nation that dares to threaten the interests of Kirigakure will bear the consequences. Boom. The fourth Raikage smashed the desk in front of him with a thunderous slap. Rage twisted across his face as he stared at the intelligence report in his hand. Bold, aren't they? Bluffing like that. Do they really think we, Konohagakure, are afraid of Konoha? Konoha's been through war after war. What do they have left? A nearly blind Mangekyo user. They really believe that having Kirigakure's support lets them do whatever they want. Konohagakure has thousands of elite shinobi. We have not one, but 2 perfect Jinchuriki, 2 tails and 8 tails. And they think that Shattered Village can stop us. Yeah, because they found themselves a real daddy. A few of Konohagakure's elder advisors stood silently nearby, not daring to make a sound. They had, in fact, prepared for war with Konoha. Why? Because intel from a fallen Konohagakure Jonin had confirmed that the Mangekyo Sharingan leads to blindness, and that Uchiha Fugaku was almost blind. With that knowledge, they were ready to continue their plan to seize the Byakugan, and go to war with Konoha afterward if needed. But they hadn't expected Kirigakure to so openly back Konoha, even issuing such a brazen statement. Touch Konoha, and we'll fight you. Lord Raikage, perhaps we should just. One elder, trying to persuade the Raikage to stand down, caught a glimpse of his furious expression and swallowed the rest of his sentence. The advisors exchanged glances, unsure what to do. Eventually, the eldest among them stepped forward. His cloudy eyes locked onto the fourth Raikage. Hey, do you want to fight? Yes. The fourth Raikage's gaze was firm and blazing. I want to fight. Then let's fight. Elder. The other advisors were shocked and cried out, but the old man calmly nodded. I know what you're all thinking. But I also know what the Raikage is thinking, and what Konohagakure needs right now. Since the Second Great Ninja War, we've kept to ourselves and conserved strength. At one point, we had the highest military power in the entire shinobi world, and that's why we launched the Third Great Ninja War. But during that war, we suffered loss after loss. We gained no advantage against Suna. We lost the third Raikage to Iwa. And our conflict with Konoha ended in a whimper. Truth be told, we haven't suffered any devastating blows. Sure, we've had minor losses. But compared to the rest of the shinobi world, our strength remains the most intact. And yet, our morale, our spirit, and our people's faith, have all collapsed. The elder's voice carried a trace of bitterness as he swept his eyes across the room. The entire village is miserable. The people are hopeless. Merchants have begun to leave in droves, taking capital and resources with them. We, who preserved our strength the best, are now staring into a gray and uncertain future. Why? Because we lost the people's trust. We lost our own confidence. Everyone lowered their heads. They had all known this deep down, they just didn't want to face it. Now that the elder had ripped the veil away, there was no more hiding. Our village needs a war, and more importantly, a victory. Even a costly victory would be better than this. So. The elder turned to the fourth Raikage. Go to war, Lord Raikage. Even with Kirigakure looming over us, we must fight. Good. The fourth Raikage nodded fiercely. The elder's words echoed his own inner thoughts, and the rest of the council finally understood, this war had to happen. But if they were going to war, it had to be smart war. This wasn't about wasting manpower recklessly, they were fighting for victory, not pride. The fourth Raikage stepped toward a large wall-mounted map of the shinobi world, his voice steely. Konoha isn't the problem. Fugaku's nearly blind. Even if he burns out in one final blaze, it's just a flash before death. All we need to do is drag things out, he'll fall apart. The real threat is Kirigakure. We have to admit it. Kirigakure is now the strongest in the shinobi world, even without Yuki Yoru. Add the Soul Society Shinigami on top of that, and they crushed us before. If we can avoid direct conflict with them, we should. Therefore, my plan is. The Raikage's finger traced from the land of lightning, cutting directly through the land of rivers, and finally landing inside the land of fire. Concentrate our elites. Launch a lightning-fast assault. We'll strike Konoha before Kirigakure can react. Overwhelm them. And if Kirigakure intervenes, we'll grab whatever spoils we can and retreat back to our fortified terrain. From there, we'll defend and counterattack. But that kind of plan, the gains might be minimal, one elder muttered, frowning. It doesn't matter. The fourth Raikage's voice was resolute, his gaze sharp as blades, his fists clenched tight. All we need is a victory. A battle to revive Kimogakure's fighting spirit. A war that shakes the shinobi world. A complete, undeniable, overwhelming victory. All we need is to win. Understood. Chapter 205, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 205. Since war had already been decided upon, the next step was pre-war mobilization and strategic preparation. And because it was going to be a lightning war, Kimogakure's preparations were done with extreme secrecy and incredible speed. Within half a day, the troops were assembled. Within 3 days, a rapid forced march had been completed. While the rest of the shinobi world was still fixated on the media war between Konoha and Kimogakure, the fourth Raikage had already led his elite forces into the land of rivers, now facing the border of the land of fire. Lord Fourth. Big bro. Under the cover of a hazy moon, the fourth Raikage stood atop a towering tree, silently surveying the endless forest of the land of fire ahead, a strange look on his face. Behind him stood the 8-tails Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, and the 2-tails Jinchuriki, Yujito ni, as well as a Kumo Jonin with short purple hair and distinct lower lashes. This was none other than Todai, the frontline commander from Kimogakure's last war against Konoha. How's the recon? The fourth Raikage's tone was grim as he tightened the heavy gauntlet on his right wrist. Blue-white arcs of lightning crackled around his body, he was fully charged, ready to strike. The Byakugan's vision can pierce through obstacles up to a kilometer away, but when focused, they can see even 10 kilometers in the distance. Reference, during the Canon Brotherly battle, Hinata used the Byakugan to spot Amaterasu flames 10 kilometers away. Our current distance from Konoha's border patrol is 20 kilometers. A full-speed assault will take only minutes to reach them. What about Kirigakure? No movement detected, Todai replied in a low, heavy voice, clearly uneasy. But according to intel from Iwagakure and previous operations, Kiri's shinobi are extremely fast. Especially those Shinigami, we estimate they possess flight, or even large-scale teleportation spacetime ninjutsu similar to the heavenly transfer jutsu. As long as our strike is like thunder and swift as the wind, Kiri won't be fast enough to respond. The fourth Raikage's voice cut through the night. He clenched his fists tighter as he gazed into the pitch-black sea of forest ahead. Listen up, Todai, half an hour from now, you lead the main army forward. B. Yujito, you're coming with me for the initial strike. Yes, sir. This was a lightning war. Naturally, speed and aggression were key. With the fourth Raikage and 2 perfect Jinchuriki leading the charge, they formed an unstoppable spearhead that could pierce through any defense. The main force would follow behind to clean up. A dark night with a chill wind, the perfect time to kill. Electric arcs danced violently over the Rakich's body. This man, ambitious and brutal, yet until now largely ineffective, was finally ready to bare his sharpest fangs to the world. This battle will show the shinobi world the power of Konohagakure. Lightning erupted. Chakra surged. 3 figures vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, at the Fire Country's border, atop a watchtower, a few Konoha shinobi were chatting and laughing. Only Aburame Shiyu, a jonin in dark shades, stood silently against the wall. We're guarding the border, shouldn't we take this a bit more seriously? Come on, Shiyu, don't be so uptight. Haven't you been watching the news? Kiri already made their stance clear, said Inuzuka Ao from below with a grin. I hate those guys, but they're strong as hell. With Kiri backing us up, Kumo doesn't even dare fart in our direction. What are you still worried about? Don't be too optimistic, Ao, Shiyu replied, adjusting his glasses. Between great nations, a few harsh words don't mean much. But, watch, in 2 days, forget war, Kumo's gonna be the one apologizing to us. Haha, can't deny it, even though the 5th Hokage's a Uchiha, this alliance with Kirigakure really was a brilliant move. No joke, have you seen that infrastructure project? My cousin's working on it. The pay and benefits. Insane. Way better than what we get out here. What can we do? They're the ones with the money. We just get stuck here freezing our butts off. Bzzz. Bzzz. Ignoring his companion's chatter, Shiyu quietly channeled chakra to sense the swarm of bugs he had deployed earlier. All clear. No enemies. No enemies nearby. He relayed the info with cold efficiency, then returned to leaning against the wall. The others just laughed, thinking Shiyu was being overly paranoid. But Shiyu remained silent. Back in the Third Great Ninja War, Konoha had suffered heavy losses due to poor intel management. Their enemy back then? None other than the phantom-like Mizuno Yuki Yoru. After the war, the Aburame clan head, Shirkai, had issued a harsh reminder. A shinobi's war is a war of information. Knowing the enemy's position is the foundation of intelligence. That is the Aburame's duty. If you hold the position, fulfill the responsibility. Reconnaissance could not fail. ZZZZT. Just as the sentries let their guard down, a flash of blue-white lightning streaked through the darkness. The Hyuga branch family Jonin barely had time to activate his Byakugan before a massive lightning-charged fist punched clean through the skull of the Inuzuka beside him. In a flash, that same hand grabbed the Hyuga's face. The man's forehead protector was ripped off, revealing the cursed seal of the caged bird. So it's a branch member, huh? A flicker of disappointment passed through the 4th Rakich's eyes. His chakra flared again, and in the next instant, the Hyuga Jonin's brain was fried into paste. Aburame Shiyu's ever-blank expression finally twisted in horror. He stared at the muscular figure cloaked in lightning, and the 2 figures who appeared behind him. His heart clenched. The 4th Rakichi. No way. For a Kage to appear here, the implication was obvious. The Rakichi cast a disdainful glance at the scorched Hyuga corpse, then flicked his gaze toward Shiyu. Lightning surged from his body again. Lightning release, Liger Bomb. The Rakichi's body shot forward like a cannonball. The escaping chakra fried the Aburame's bugs on the spot. His hand cleaved through the air with thunderous force. A clean decapitation. The pale moonlight shone on the ground. The corpses of all 3 Konoha shinobi still sizzled from the residual heat. Keep moving. Yes, sir. Like a spear driving through the night, the 3 tore deep into the Land of Fire's territory. It had to be said, the Rakichi's speed was terrifying. From the border of the Land of Rivers, he pushed all the way into the heart of the Land of Fire in just one night. With his lightning-released chakra cloak, he cut down every outpost and guard station in his path. By the time Fugaku received word of the invasion, the 4th Rakichi was already at the gates, deep in the Land of Fire's interior. Since you're so eager to die, let me grant your wish. Fresh from completing a successful experiment, Fugaku was riding a massive surge in power, and with no more worries about ocular degeneration, his confidence was unshakable. He immediately called an emergency Jonin council meeting. Within moments, the Jonin stationed in Konoha rushed to the Hokage building. Looking over the gathered leaders of the Uchiha, Hyuga, Ino Shikocho, and Aburame clans, plus the other elite Jonin, Fugaku showed no sign of stress. Instead, he stood tall, his voice sharp, clutching the intel report. His eyes swept across the room. Among all the Jonin present, only the Uchiha wore expressions of excitement. No one wanted war. But right now, war was unavoidable. This is the latest report. The 4th Rakichi and 2 Jinchuriki have broken deep into Fire Country. They're just a few miles from Konoha. Behind them is an elite Kumo force numbering in the thousands. Since taking office, I've led Konoha into a golden age, defeating Kumogakure, allying with Kirigakure, and intimidating Iwagakure. The three-nation infrastructure pact has created countless jobs for our citizens. We're finally rising again. But now, Kumogakure seeks not only our Kekkei Genkai, they want to destroy the peace we've worked so hard for. Tell me, what should we do? We fight, shouted Uchiha Inabi, raising his arm. Exactly. Only war can put down these snakes. Only war will protect what's ours. Uchiha Setsuna. Lord Fifth. Setsuna, present not as a shinobi but as an Uchiha elder, spoke coldly. Deploy 500 shinobi. Intercept Kumo's forces from the Kawazu Pass. Yes, sir. Elder Danzo. Danzo, silent until now, stiffened as Fugaku called his name. For a moment, he looked stunned. Deploy 500. Move in from Miki City and cut off their rear. Danzo inhaled deeply, his exposed eye flashing with resolve. Leave it to me, Lord Fifth. Elder Torifu. Here. Akimichi Torifu stood tall, his expression solemn. Despite once being a political rival and close ally of Hiruzen Sarutobi, neither he nor Danzo hesitated now that Konoha was in peril. You're willing to use us? We're willing to fight. Deploy 500. Move to the Fire Earth border. Reinforce defenses, IWA may seize this chance. Understood. Mitokato Hamura. Hamura furrowed his brows but still stepped forward. The enemy is at our doorstep. We need all defensive barriers replaced within 3 days. We cannot repeat the same security lapses that the Hyuga once suffered. Understood. Hamura exhaled heavily. With Minato gone, he was now the most proficient in spacetime jutsu. Overhauling the barrier network was his burden to bear. Fugaku assigned each task in rapid succession. Every shinobi in the room wore a solemn face. Despite the precise division of labor, the forces being deployed were relatively limited, just 1,000 from Danzo and Setsuna combined, against 3,000 to 4,000 elite Kumo shinobi. But this was all Konoha could spare. And lastly, Fugaku turned to Hyuga Hayashi, and a silent jonin standing quietly in the corner. Hyuga Hayashi. Kazematsuri. You'll come with me. We're confronting the fourth Raikage head-on. This battle, Konoha must win. Hayashi nodded slightly. The jonin beside him exhaled slowly, then gave a firm nod. Some readers may wonder, who is this Kazematsuri who got personally selected to fight alongside Fugaku and Hayashi? He is Kazematsuri, or rather, Senju Fusai. After the First Shinobi War, the Senju clan withdrew from the spotlight and relinquished their clan name. But a few refused to abandon the glory of their lineage. Unfortunately, this sentiment wasn't widely accepted. The mainstream Senju believed they had already fully merged with Konoha and saw no reason to maintain a separate clan identity. Yet some, like Fusai, remained stubborn. When Tsunade left Konoha, Fusai could no longer hold back. Gathering a small number of supporters, he adopted Kazematsuri as a new surname and quietly re-established a clan. Fun fact, in the Boruto era, a descendant of the Kazematsuri clan, Kazematsuri Moegi, awakened would release, becoming the first Senju since Hashirama to do so naturally. Inside the Hokage office, Fugaku looked at Fusai and Hayashi, as if 3 beams of light were shining on the 3 of them. Hyuga. Senju. Uchiha. The 3 founding clans of Konoha, reunited once more. But this time, the one leading them was Uchiha. Chapter 206, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 206. Normally, once a declaration of war is made, it's followed by a flurry of preparations, weapons, rations, logistics, and so on. But this time was different. With Kumogakure's army already pressing in, this had become a full-fledged defensive war for Konoha. There was no time to waste on traditional prep. By the time you finish your preparations, the enemy would already be at your doorstep. That's why, once Uchiha Fugaku issued his command, Konoha's shinobi moved out lightly equipped, marching rapidly to intercept the Kumo invasion. At the same time, after relaying the situation to Kirigakure, Fugaku personally led Hyuga Hayashi and Senju Fusai, fully armed, in search of the Raikage's position. Konoha's forces were outnumbered. Attempting a large-scale military clash against Kumogakure would be suicide. Their only chance at victory lay in stopping the rampaging fourth Raikage deep within the Land of Fire and winning through top-tier force. Many Konoha shinobi had expected Kumo to try a prolonged war of attrition, forcing a weakened Konoha to surrender through slow, grinding losses. No one expected a full-scale battle to erupt the very next day, nor for the 2 village leaders to face off directly. The fourth Raikage hadn't even tried to conceal his presence, barging into the Land of Fire with 2 Jinchuriki at his side. Using Hayashi's Byakugan, Fugaku quickly located him. So this is your idea of peace, Kumogakure? Staring at the massive, dark-skinned men with short blonde hair and rippling muscles, Fugaku took a long breath. You've already sent shinobi to steal Konoha's Kekkei in secret. And now you invade with your entire force, slaughtering our comrades within our homeland. Spare me the hypocrisy, Uchiha Fugaku, the fourth Raikage bellowed. Return Lottie and the rest of our people now. We sent envoys seeking peace, you paraded around with talk of justice and harmony. But the moment we disagreed on terms, you imprisoned our emissaries. If you won't return Lottie and the others today, then Konoha will be erased from this world. Humph. Fugaku let out a cold chuckle, the mangekyo in his eyes spinning darkly. Beside him, Hayashi and Fusai both wore equally grim expressions. Especially Hayashi. Kumogakure had long coveted the Byakugan, and had even conspired with that masked Uchiha to abduct several Hyuga clan heirs, nearly including his own daughter. Now, they dared to invade Konoha outright. This was not just an insult to the Hyuga, it was an outrage against the entire village. Lord Fifth, there's no point talking to them. Let's fight. Hayashi said coldly. Fight. The fourth Raikage sneered. Still got that pair of eyes, huh, Hayashi? In the days before the Third Great War, Konoha had been a true force, especially with Minato Namikaze alive. But now, they were just Kirigakure's lapdogs. The fourth Raikage himself was here, along with two perfect Jinchuriki. This broken down Konoha. He could wipe it out with a single blow. Lightning release, Liger bomb. In a flash, the Raikage exploded forward like a cannon shell, arm drawn like a blade, cleaving toward Fugaku. Fast. But not fast enough. Fugaku's Mangekyo spun rapidly. With a swift motion, he flung several kunai in a sharp arc toward the Raikage. The kunai flew at tight, unexpected angles, even with the Raikage's monstrous speed, he was still grazed. But his lightning chakra armor, layered over his skin-like armor, completely deflected the strikes. Not that Fugaku had intended to injure him with them anyway. To a Kage-level opponent, kunai were virtually meaningless. Even Hiruzen or Minato's legendary shuriken techniques were more psychological than practical at this tier. Of course, there were exceptions, like that one particular blade that could fly 100 miles and even threaten the god of shinobi. But these kunai weren't simple weapons. Each one was tied to specially reinforced steel wire, which shimmered faintly under the moonlight, aiming to bind the Raikage mid-charge. At the same time, Fugaku pulled hard on the wires, releasing a fully charged fire release jutsu. Sharingan Windmill, Great Fire Dragon. Flames surged along the wires like living serpents, forming a blazing dragon that howled toward the Raikage. But it wasn't enough. Boom. The Raikage, clad in lightning chakra, tore through the wires and fire like a runaway freight train, charging straight at Fugaku. Earth release, Swamp of the Underworld. Senju Fusai was quick to react, turning the ground beneath the Raikage into a massive muddy swamp. But the effect was negligible. Lightning sparked violently, and the mud was blasted skyward by the Raikage's sheer physical attacks. Even an A-rank jutsu couldn't slow him down. Speed is power. Speed is impact. Revolving Heaven. Hayashi leapt forward, activating the Hyuga clan's absolute defense, a spinning barrier that deflected all physical attacks. But even Revolving Heaven, famed for countering any physical attacks, couldn't hold back the Raikage's explosive strength. Boom. Hayashi was sent flying. In an instant, the combined strike of Konoha's three great clans had been completely shattered. So this is the one who inherited the title of, the fourth Raikage. Fugaku's heart trembled at the overwhelming display of raw power. The fourth Raikage's physical body was monstrous, a tower of muscle even among shinobi. And with lightning release chakra mode, that already fearsome body became even stronger, faster, more resilient. It boosted everything, speed, defense, offense, by several magnitudes. Combined with his mastery of top-tier lightning release techniques, this man was nothing short of a living war machine. But Fugaku's eyes narrowed slightly, staring past the Raikage, at the two figures behind him. Initially, he had planned to face the Raikage 3-on-1, Hyuga, Senju, Uchiha vs. 1. But now there were two Jinchuriki at his side. Fugaku bit his thumb and rapidly formed hand seals. Summoning Jutsu. Boom. A cloud of white smoke burst forth. When it cleared, two elegant, stunning women in white appeared, their beauty ethereal, their presence divine. Hayashi and Fusai were both stunned. Wasn't the Uchiha clan known for summoning ninja cats or crows? When did it become women? And these weren't ordinary women, either. Already summoning us the moment we signed the contract. You're really something, little Fugaku. The one floating midair, wrapped in white sashes, barefooted and graceful, smiled teasingly. This was Taguriheim, one of the Ryuchi Cave's snake priestesses. Humph. You're so inconsiderate. Orochimaru never summoned us this early. The other had long blue hair, a golden crown on her head, and looked like a delicate doll. She pouted slightly, Ichikishimahime, the younger of the two. Indeed. Fugaku had summoned none other than two of Ryuchi Cave's legendary snake maidens. Sorry to trouble you, sages. Where's the third one? Fugaku asked, scanning their surroundings. Busy with other tasks. White Snake Sage keeps us working non-stop, Ichikishimahime sniffed, then leaned close, nearly brushing against Fugaku. Why? Want to spread our teachings in Konoha, If we win this battle, Fugaku said calmly, Konoha can become a sanctuary for your faith. Oh. So generous. Tagriheim smiled, but as her gaze landed on the Raikage and his two Jinchuriki, her expression froze. Don't tell me, you want us to fight that guy, and two perfect Jinchuriki. You should be asking Yuki Yoru for this. Lord Mizukage is very busy, Fugaku said flatly. I just need you to hold them off. Turning to the slightly dazed Hayashi and Fusai, he barked. Hayashi, Fusai, assist the snake priestesses. But keep the battle from spilling too close to the village. Understood. While Hayashi and Fusai were clan heads of the Hyuga and Senju respectively, their power wasn't on par with the monsters of old. They were elite jonin, perhaps quasi-kage level at best. That level could take on normal Jinchuriki, but against perfect hosts like the Hachibi and Nibi. Not a chance. But with two sages backing them up, stalling should be doable. A Byakugan user. And one of Senju blood. The snake maidens were momentarily at a loss. They had lived for centuries, and knew all too well the tangled history between Uchiha, Senju, and Hyuga. To see all three now united, and led by a Uchiha, was almost surreal. Sages of Ryuchi Cave, huh? Hayashi and Fusai recognized the snake features manifesting on the maidens' bodies. Combined with their interaction with Fugaku, it was clear who they were. Their confidence grew. Yes, the enemy had powerful Jinchuriki, but they were not weak either. And now they had the backing of two sage-level allies. The Raikage's expression darkened as he watched Fugaku's summons. He was impressed, Konoha's foundations were deeper than expected. But that wouldn't stop him. Even if the sages of the three great sacred lands were here, what of it? I am unrivaled. First kill Fugaku. Then eliminate the Hyuga and Senju. Seize their Kekkei Genkai. Destroy Konoha. Once Kumogakure possessed the Sharingan and Byakugan, not even Kirigakure or Yuki Yoru could stop their rise. The Raikage understood his village's strengths and its fatal weakness. Lightning release chakra mode was insanely powerful, but also incredibly dangerous to train. One misstep could permanently damage the user. Which is why, even though it was a B-rank technique, only the physically elite Raikage bloodline could master it. But what if they had a dojutsu, like the Sharingan? A visual jutsu that could observe their own chakra flow, allowing them to refine and safely master this technique. Then the number of Kumogakure shinobi able to use lightning release chakra mode would multiply exponentially. So what if Yuki Yoru is strong? So what if Kirigakure is rising? I'll drown them in 10,000 lightning armor warriors. Even if you summon the White Snake Sage herself, it won't matter. With those nearly blind eyes of yours, this war already belongs to Kumogakure. Lightning surged. The Raikage vanished again, reappearing in front of Fugaku in a flash. Elbow bolt. His arm, crackling with lightning, crashed down like a meteor onto Fugaku's skull. Even the others, the four fighting behind and the two snake maidens, turned toward the impact. The chakra shockwave kicked up dust across the entire field. But then, from within the haze, a massive blue skeletal hand erupted, fingers spread. Dark chakra and Een release energy gathered in its palm, condensing into a gigantic chakra blade, which came crashing down toward the Raikage. Boom. The ground shook. Birds fled. Trees shattered. Blind. Ah-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Laughter rang out as the dust cleared. Fugaku stood tall, one hand over his face, the Mangekyo spinning with overwhelming force. Who told you? I was going blind. Behind him, a towering blue half-bodied warrior loomed, skeletal and armored, twin blades in hand. Are you ready to taste despair? This is the power of the third power. Susanoo. Chapter 207, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 207. Uchiha Fugaku had always been an exceptionally calm and composed man. Perhaps it was because he had lived under constant scrutiny by the Hokage's faction, or because Uchiha Setsuna, the infamous rebel, had left behind a trail of mistrust that pushed the Uchiha clan into a politically awkward position within Konoha. Even after Fugaku became the fifth Hokage, that situation didn't improve much. The reason? None other than the immense burden of his Mangekyo Sharingan, a pressure that weighed on him like a mountain. But all of it changed the moment he underwent that procedure with Yuki Yoru. From that moment on, the pressure inside him erupted, releasing the long-restrained, Uchiha maniacal laughter cells that now fully awakened. After implanting Hashirama's cells, the continuous surge of ocular power allowed Fugaku to finally say, "There's nothing I lack anymore." Amid the echoing, unrestrained laughter, Fugaku's Mangekyo unleashed an overwhelming surge of chakra. The skeletal aura surrounding him instantly solidified. A beam of radiant light shot upward from his body center, and a towering humanoid skeleton began to fully manifest, emanating a crushing, divine pressure. This was the second stage of Susanoo. Now, I'm unbeatable. Liger bomb. Fugaku hadn't even finished his boast when the Raikage's body exploded upward, cloaked in flickering lightning chakra. With a thunderous roar, he descended like a divine bolt, combining overwhelming force with high-velocity impact. Boom. The ground groaned and split with a massive crack. Fugaku's laughter abruptly halted. His eyes widened as he watched his second-stage Susanoo, touted as an ultimate defense, fracture like glass under the impact. Not good. Blood-red eyes spinning wildly, Fugaku forced an immense outflow of chakra to repair the damage. His Susanoo rapidly regenerated, layers of thick armor plating forming across its surface. Seeing this, the Raikage frowned deeply. Then, with another violent flare of lightning chakra, he reoriented himself midair and rocketed forward again, faster and stronger than before. Double lariat of raging thunder. The flash of an iron-strong blow, piercing like thunder's wrath. Boom. Even the newly upgraded third-stage Susanoo was forced back several steps. The sheer force of the blow ended Fugaku's laughter. His face turned grim. The fourth Raikage's power had far exceeded his expectations. Had they fought before the surgery he received in Kirigakure, Fugaku was nearly certain he'd have lost, 9 times out of 10. But not now. Now, I wield the power of all creation. The Susanoo, now clad in its third-stage black Tengu armor, erupted with renewed chakra. Its body expanded drastically, massive limbs forming beneath it, lifting Fugaku high into the air. Susanoo, fourth stage. Tremble before the power of the Uchiha, Raikage. Inside the chakra titan, Fugaku's Mangekyo spun madly. His Susanoo roared, dual swords crossing before exploding outward, sheathed in a raging vortex of violet-blue chakra. The slash tore through the battlefield like a hurricane. Trees shattered like matchsticks. The ground shook. It was as if the earth itself couldn't bear the force. What kind of joke is this? Even with the overwhelming might of the fourth stage Susanoo looming, the fourth Raikage showed no fear. I'm still damn it. Rah. With a furious roar, the Raikage erupted in a surge of lightning so intense it lit up the entire battlefield. Countless bolts, as thick as fingers, snaked across his body. His spiky blonde hair stood on end, like a super scion incarnate. Strongest lightning release armor. This was lightning release chakra mode pushed to its absolute maximum, the Raikage's ultimate buff. In this state, his speed, defense, muscle responsiveness, and reaction time were all enhanced to the extreme, granting him lightning-fast mobility and near-total damage immunity. But instead of rushing in, the Raikage calmly raised his right hand. Thumb pressed to palm. 4 fingers extended. Lightning chakra began to compress and gather in his fingers, building into a hyper-concentrated point of power. His ring finger slowly curled in, and as it bent, the intensity in his other 3 fingers multiplied. That technique. From afar, Hayashi, Fusai, Killer Bee, and Yujito all turned their gazes to the battlefield. Bee and Yujito exchanged glances. Their pupils shrank. They knew Fugaku was strong, but they hadn't expected him to push the Raikage this far. Long ago. The third Raikage had earned his legendary title by single-handedly battling the 8 Tails, and holding off 10,000 Iwagakure shinobi for 3 days and nights, allowing Kimogakure's retreat. And the secret to that feat? 2 ultimate techniques. The strongest shield, the enhanced lightning release chakra armor. And the strongest spear, the terrifying Hell Stab. The very same technique the fourth Raikage now prepared to unleash. Hell Stab concentrated lightning chakra into 4 fingers. The fewer fingers used, the greater the penetrative power. At 1 finger, it reached its peak. While the fourth Raikage had yet to fully master the 1-finger version, even 3 fingers were more than enough to challenge the strongest defenses. Dai, Uchiha Fugaku. Hell Stab, 3-finger Nukite. What? In a flash of lightning, the Raikage vanished. Even with his Mangekyo's powerful tracking abilities, Fugaku couldn't follow his movement, it was simply too fast. Rumor had it that, during the Third Great Ninja War, the Raikage went toe-to-toe with the Yellow Flash, Minato Namikaze. Fugaku had always assumed that was Kumo propaganda, there was no way anyone could match Minato's spacetime ninjutsu in raw speed, aside from perhaps Yuki Yoru or Shisui. But now. He wasn't so sure anymore. Cannot be caught. Never mind. Ultimately, you must clash and confront me, and Susanoo is the most perfect power. Fugaku snorted confidently. His 4th stage Susanoo held its twin swords high, poised for impact. Lightning flashed. The strike came too fast, Fugaku couldn't even respond. Boom. Hell stab smashed into the chest of the Susanoo. The thick black armor shattered. The inner skeletal shell cracked under the pressure. No defense is truly absolute. Even full-body Susanoo could be broken under sufficient force. Let alone stage 4. Crack. Their eyes met, both fixated on the spiderweb fractures spreading across Susanoo's ribcage. Boom. Lightning danced across the battlefield as the Raikage's three-finger hell Nukite smashed through Susanoo's chest, blowing Fugaku out of the Susanoo's body like a rag doll. He flew through the air, smashed through tree after tree, and finally crashed against a massive trunk, unmoving. The once godlike Susanoo crumbled and vanished into flickering chakra. Gaha. Blood sprayed from Fugaku's lips. His chakra was almost gone. Lord Fifth. Damn it. Hayashi and Fusai cried out in panic, trying to retreat and shield Fugaku, but the two Jinchuriki relentlessly pinned them down. One misstep, and they would have died right then. So this is the great Mangekyo Sharingan. Pathetic. The Raikage loomed above Fugaku, sneering. Arrogant fool. Did you really think you were the next Shinobi World's Azura? From this day forward, Konoha. His words were cut short. Fugaku, bloodied and gasping, suddenly lifted his head. From his left eye, a line of bloody tears slid down. The Raikage's pupils contracted. Shit. A surge of overwhelming chakra erupted. The world spun. The Raikage staggered, dizzy, as reality twisted around him. His dominant spirit deflated like a pierced balloon. Big bro. Raikage-sama. Killer Bee and Yujito shouted. For the first time, they panicked. But the Raikage steadied himself. I'm fine. He wasn't just a walking slab of muscle. His resistance to genjutsu wasn't zero. While the Mangekyo illusion had drained him, it wasn't enough to finish him. Impressive eyes. Don't worry. In Kumogakure, they won't go to waste. He raised his hand again, lightning crackling, preparing to end Fugaku once and for all. Era. A light, almost teasing voice drifted in. The Raikage's movement stopped abruptly. He turned slightly, and there, appearing silently behind him, was a figure cloaked in a white water shadow robe. Yuki Yoru. Pardon me. Would you kindly move aside? Yuki Yoru. The Raikage's face turned darker than ever. From the corner of his eye, he saw the lingering hand seals of Ichikishimaheim and the white mist that had begun to float around Yoru's body. Reverse summoning jutsu. Hayashi exhaled in relief. Fusai straightened, face taut. Bee and Yujito stiffened. Just in time. Ichikishimaheim sighed, sensing her rapidly draining sage chakra. You've got 5 minutes, no, 3 minutes at most, Yoru. 3 minutes. The word startled everyone present. Hayashi and Fusai paled. You idiot. What kind of ninja reveals their time limit to the enemy? 3 minutes. The Raikage relaxed slightly. Only 3 minutes. Even if it was Yuki Yoru, he could hold out that long. And he wouldn't let this prey slip away. That man is mine, Yoru said softly. Would you mind letting him go? He didn't even acknowledge Ichikishimaheim's warning, instead, he looked calmly at the Raikage. Sensing Yoru's chakra rising behind him, the Raikage's expression darkened. His hand shot down toward Fugaku. In that instant, the temperature plummeted. Frost bloomed outward from Yoru, encasing the Raikage's entire body, and the surrounding forest, in glacial ice. The Raikage froze mid-strike, arm outstretched, inches from Fugaku's eye. Frozen. Big bro. Raikage-sama. Killer Bee and Yujito screamed. They could no longer remain calm. Their chakra flared as they broke free from Hayashi, Fusai, and the Snake Maidens, dashing toward the Raikage. Yoru gently waved his hand. Fugaku's broken body floated toward him, landing softly beside him. Sorry. I caused trouble, Lord Yoru. Fugaku muttered weakly, forcing a faint smile. If you're calling me Lord Yoru, how could I possibly abandon you? Yoru replied with a warm smile. Even as two Jinchuriki hurtled toward them in a chakra frenzy, Yoru didn't flinch. Without turning, he raised a hand. A barrier of invisible force formed in the air, stopping both Jinchuriki's chakra blasts with ease. With his other hand, he reached toward the frozen Raikage. Can we please calm down, all of you? Chapter 208, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 208. If the battle between the 4th Raikage and Uchiha Fugaku had been the pinnacle of current shinobi combat, then what Yoru displayed just now was a level that completely shattered that ceiling, an overwhelming force from an entirely different dimension. In the blink of an eye, he had frozen heaven and earth. He'd effortlessly sealed away the rampaging 4th Raikage, whose power was enough to shatter a Susanoo, and casually deflected the attacks of two perfect Jinchuriki. Calm. Composed. Unshaken. It was this unbothered presence that filled the hearts of the Raikage and the Jinchuriki with an overwhelming, paralyzing despair. The kind of despair that erased even the thought of resistance. Impossible. How can anyone in this world do something like this? Even Killer B, a perfect Jinchuriki who had fought in multiple wars and even crossed fists with Minato Namikaze during the Third Great Ninja War, had his fighting spirit completely snuffed out in that moment. Inside his consciousness, Gyuki, the Eight Tails, had gone dead silent the instant Yoru appeared. Only one thought echoed through B's mind. Run. As for Yujito ni, if not for the six-rod-like prison binding her, she likely would have collapsed from sheer terror. Inside her spiritual realm, the Two Tails, Matatabi, was trembling like a house cat, limbs twitching uncontrollably, its back arched in fear. Yoru glanced toward Hayashi and Fusai, both of whom were breathing hard, looking utterly disheveled. Then he turned his gaze to Fugaku, who was slowly beginning to recover. Normally, any Uchiha who suffered those injuries, compounded by the backlash from overusing Mangekyo, would have been unconscious for at least 2 weeks. But Fugaku had implanted Hashirama's cells. His enhanced physical resilience allowed his body to begin regenerating almost immediately. In just moments, his injuries were stabilizing. Sorry to trouble you, Lord Yoru, Fugaku said hoarsely. I didn't expect the fourth Raikage strength to be this overwhelming, especially not with 2 perfect Jinchuriki beside him. Yoru replied flatly. At your level, battles are ultimately a contest of intel. Your data's been sitting on the Raikage's desk for months. Sure, your recovery caught him a bit off guard, but only briefly. On the other hand, you knew almost nothing about him. Yoru's gaze lingered on the frozen fourth Raikage. He hadn't erased his life force, just locked his body in ice. Kumo-gakure might not have the same heritage as Konoha, but it was still one of the 5 great nations. And the Raikage's role was more sovereign than symbolic, unlike in Konoha where elders and advisors often meddled. Yoru, who respected balance and leadership, had no interest in destroying such figures if it could be avoided. It was arrogance on my part, Lord Yoru, Fugaku murmured, bowing his head. He forcibly suppressed the Uchiha bloodline's manic instinct that had awakened earlier, the one that made him laugh like a madman after gaining power. Yoru smiled lightly and shifted his attention back to the frozen Raikage. So, what do you plan to do with them? Obviously, I'll execu, Fugaku began reflexively, but stopped short. His Sharingan picked up on a tiny micro-expression on Yoru's face. Instantly, he corrected himself. I mean, I'll follow your lead, Lord Yoru. Had this been a typical situation, Fugaku would have killed the Raikage on the spot to secure Konoha's upper hand in the war. At minimum, he would have dragged the men back to Konoha, to boost morale and pressure Kumo into surrendering. But, with Yuki Yoru here, Fugaku knew better. That's why Yoru had chosen him. Because Fugaku understood the situation. Good, Yoru said approvingly. I like working with smart people. Then I'll take them with me for now. You clean things up here, then head to the front lines to stabilize the situation. Understood, Lord Yoru. With a flicker of chakra, Yoru vanished, taking the frozen fourth Raikage and the 2 Jinchuriki with him. Fusai opened his mouth to speak but shut it again. Without Yuki Yoru, not only would they all be dead, Konoha itself might have collapsed today. Yoru had saved them. The least they could do was shut up and be grateful. All right, little Fugaku, said Tagiri Himei, floating toward him. Now that this mess is wrapped up, we're heading out too. Don't forget your promise. We're choosing recruits from Konoha next, make sure the ANBU and Root know to stay out of our way, or they might get bitten. Fugaku nodded solemnly. You have my word. If not for the 2 of you, this would have been Konoha's downfall. And as a holy land, Ryukido choosing from our shinobi is an honor. Good, then it's settled, muttered Ichikishimaheim beside her. You go back first, Tagiriheim. I need to stop by Yoru's place, maintaining the reverse summoning is draining. He wiped out 2/3 of my sage chakra in one go, the guy's a damn monster. Sure, sure. With a puff of smoke, the 2 priestesses vanished. The battlefield fell silent once again. Lord Fifth. You did well, Hayashi. Fusai, Fugaku said, now standing fully upright. Feeling his chakra restoring rapidly, he clenched his fist. Let's go. Kumo's got 3,000 elite shinobi pressing our front lines. Danzo and Setsuna can't hold them off for long. If we don't crush them hard this time, they'll never learn. Yes, sir. Fugaku shot into the trees, leading the charge. Behind him, Hayashi and Fusai hesitated slightly. Hayashi's veins bulged, Byakugan still active, as he stared at Fugaku's retreating figure with furrowed brows. You saw it too, didn't you? Fusai said quietly, using chakra transmission. The backlash from the Mangekyo, the Susanoo breaking, the chakra loss, no Uchiha could have recovered so fast. It's unnatural. What's your point? Don't you want the 5th Hokage to be strong? Hayashi replied flatly, keeping pace. Of course I do. But the method he used to get that strong, don't you find it curious? Curiosity kills the cat, Fusai. That power, it came from Yuki Yoru, didn't it? Your daughter is his student. Why didn't he give you that strength? Meaningless provocation. Hayashi said no more, ignoring Fusai and hurrying to catch up with Fugaku. That didn't mean he wasn't paying attention. With his Byakugan, he could clearly see a strange chakra signature at Fugaku's side, around his lower abdomen, and a face that every Konoha ninja recognized. The face of the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. So it's the power of ancestral reversion. Watching Fugaku sprint ahead in his fire-patterned Hokage robes, Hayashi's pale eyes grew complicated. He'd suspected something like this ever since Yoru had told him about the possibility of evolving the Byakugan into the Tenseigan, hinting at ancestral power. But the conditions to evolve the Byakugan were extremely strict, bordering on brutal, and involved intraclan conflict. So Hayashi had never acted on the information. Now it seemed Fugaku had already started down that path, with Yoru's help. A fusion of Senju and Uchiha blood. This battle had shown Hayashi the true gap between himself and the world's top-tier ninja. He couldn't take on Fugaku. Or the Raikage. Let alone two Jinchuriki. He was already falling behind. The Hyuga clan couldn't depend on him forever. Hinata was still just a child. It was time. He needed to consult with Yoru. Meanwhile, Kumogakure's invasion of Konoha had been executed like a lightning war. Two prongs. One led by the Raikage and two Jinchuriki. The other, a force of elite shinobi rushing in behind them. The goal was simple. Strike fast. Strike hard. Break Konoha before Kirigakure could react. Given the current war conditions, it should have worked. But what Kumo hadn't anticipated was Uchiha Fugaku using reverse summoning to bring Yuki Yoru to the battlefield. And even more unimaginable was that Yoru, even under the limitations of reverse summoning, could still unleash such overwhelmingly dominant power. Perhaps this was the essence of reality, victory nearly within reach, only to be shattered by cruel fate. I believe this is the first time we've met in person, fourth Raikage. Yoru stood calmly, eyes filled with curiosity as he watched the men before him emerge from his icy prison. The Raikage's muscles bulged with tension as he circulated chakra to unfreeze and reawaken his body, searching for openings, preparing to strike at any moment. The fourth Raikage's talent and character had earned respect not just in Kumo, but across the entire shinobi world. Among the history of the five Kage, he ranked among the elite. Without any Six Paths bloodline, he had still grown strong enough to suppress the Eight Tails, beat down Mangekyo Sharingan users, and once punched Uchiha Sasuke, at the height of his arrogance, so hard it snapped him out of his delusions. Despite his explosive personality, he was more than just brute force. Sharp-minded, ambitious, driven, and indifferent to women, the Dojinshi Raikage was pure slander. He fit the archetype of a true warlord to a T. Very few shadows in ninja history could truly compare. Unfortunately, this kind of warlord was doomed to meet walls at every turn. In all his years, he'd never truly achieved what he sought. In many ways, he was Kumo's Jiraiya, talented, respected, yet fatefully thwarted. Let me guess, Yoru said lightly. You probably thought that, if not for me, with your power combined with a perfect Eight-Tails host and a Two-Tails host starting to master full-tailed beast form, you could have broken through Konoha today, swift and clean, like a thunderclap, taking the land of fire in one stroke. The Raikage's face darkened. He silently gathered chakra, trying to push his lightning-release chakra mode to its peak once more. You defeated Konoha, so what makes you think we couldn't? He snapped coldly. Don't think you're anything special, Yuki Yoru. Fair enough. What I can do, others might be able to do, Yoru replied with a chuckle, shaking his head. But your mistake is in your goal. I merely defeated Konoha. You sought to destroy it. There's a difference. True, Konoha sits atop the richest land in the shinobi world. It enjoys the most abundant natural resources and has been viewed as a prize since the Warring States period. Across 100 years, there were countless moments of weakness, countless enemies who tried to seize it. But none ever succeeded. Not even I could destroy Konoha. And yet you, exhausted, thinking Konoha spent from war, believed you could raze it to the ground. Hell stab, three-finger Nukite. A massive surge of lightning burst forth. The Raikage roared as his chakra exploded, his most powerful lightning release armor coating his body. In that moment, his physical energy, mental focus, and chakra control all reached their absolute peak. With terrifying acceleration, he launched his strongest technique. His body became a bolt of pure lightning, shooting toward Yoru. Not even the Mangekyo Sharingan could react in time to this attack. At this instant, the fourth Raikage once again proved himself the fastest shinobi alive since the death of the fourth Hokage. Except, of course, for Yoru. You know, Yoru said calmly, unmoving, the courage to swing your blade even knowing the difference between our strength. That's admirable. But the moment the Raikage strike should have landed, his body suddenly froze. He was completely paralyzed before Yoru. A terrifying, unexplainable pressure engulfed him, like something pressing directly on his soul. It felt like suffocation. Like being swallowed by an abyss. The Raikage strike halted midair. His face twisted in agony, his muscles refusing to move. From his dashing charge, he collapsed into a kneel, trembling and wide-eyed, as if his very will had been crushed. No. I can't. A weak voice called out behind them. Little Ichikishimahime slumped limply against the base of a massive tree, her tiny form shaky and pale as she glared at Yoru, half complaining, half exhausted. Big brother, can you stop showing off already? I'm seriously out of energy. Chapter 209, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 209. There was no doubt about it, Yuki Yoru's current power level was overwhelming. And to reverse summon such a being required an astronomical amount of chakra. Moreover, the duration of that summoning would decrease significantly depending on how much power Yoru unleashed while summoned. After just 2 attacks, Yoru's summoning time had already been drastically reduced. At this point, Ichikishimahime had to speak up, warning him not to keep showing off. If he overextended before things were resolved, she'd run out of chakra first and be forced to cancel the reverse summoning. Of course, even this was already a best-case scenario. If the summoner weren't Ichikishimahime, but instead someone like Uchiha Fugaku or Hyuga Hayashi, they likely wouldn't even have been capable of maintaining the reverse summoning at all. When she spoke up, a glimmer of hope actually sparked in the eyes of the 4th Raikage and the 2 Jinchuriki. If the reverse summoning technique could no longer be maintained, then Yuki Yoru would be forcibly sent back to Kirigakure. And then... If that's the case, you should return first, Yoru said casually. He glanced at Ichikishimahime, a soft blue light rising around him. Just moments earlier, Ichikishimahime had felt her senjutsu chakra draining like water from a pump. But suddenly, that flow ceased, and the reverse summoning connection between her and Yoru vanished altogether. He had just manually terminated the reverse summoning, and stabilized the spatial energy in the process. To confront spatial forces with his own power and dissolve them at will, was that something a normal person could do? Even the White Snake Sage would need time to prepare for something like that. Is this guy even human? Then I'll take my leave, Ichikishimahime muttered. Her shock and disbelief remained unspoken as she dissolved into a puff of smoke and vanished. That last thread of hope in the hearts of Konohagakure's shinobi, completely shattered. Especially the proud, headstrong 4th Raikage. Even before Yoru's rise to fame, the Raikage had taken notice of him. After all, during the 3rd Great Ninja War, he'd already tasted defeat at the hands of Konoha, by the Yellow Flash himself. So when someone appeared who had single-handedly destroyed Konoha, the Raikage immediately gathered every bit of intelligence he could on Yuki Yoru. Master-level Kenjutsu, ice release capable of freezing entire landscapes and manipulating weather, speed rivaling space-time ninjutsu, and even mastery of a unique space-time technique equal to the Yellow Flash. These 3 elements formed the foundation of Yoru's combat system during the 3rd Ninja War. However, following the war, rumors began to emerge about strange things like Soul Master, Shinigami from the Soul Society, and spiritual power. The Raikage had dismissed these as misinformation, fabrications by Kirigakure to confuse and distract. Fake news. After all, how could someone develop such completely unheard-of powers in just a few years? It had to be a smokescreen. But once Shinigami from the Soul Society began to appear openly in the shinobi world, when they even aided Konoha during the last war against Kumo, the 4th Raikage could no longer deny it. Those so-called rumors weren't lies. And now, as he witnessed Yoru's strength firsthand, on a level utterly beyond his own, it was clear. A monster like you. The Raikage growled hoarsely, his voice cracked with emotion. Forget Konoha. There's no one in the entire shinobi world who can stop you. You have the power to topple everything, and yet you, someone who seized power from the 3rd Mizukage, someone with such overwhelming ambition, why the hell would you choose to do nothing? Topple everything. Yoru chuckled softly, shaking his head. That's the problem with people who never leave their own little worlds. You really think the power I possess is enough to overturn the shinobi world? There had always been people in this world, people who, the moment they acquired a bit of power, couldn't wait to jump out and proclaim their dream of unifying the world. Like Saimai of the Village of Artisans, Hirako with his forbidden Kekkei fusions, the demon Morio. And yet, without exception, they had all ended up as side quests for the protagonist. Nothing more than stepping stones. The shinobi world was never that simple as it appears on the surface. Even Nagato, who considered himself a god, and the 6 Paths of Pain, who dominated the shinobi world for decades, had only just begun to glimpse the threshold of the shinobi world's true powers. The old gods from the Sage of 6 Paths era still clung to life, buried deep beneath volcanoes, healing in the dark. Even the shinobi world's Azura, Madara Uchiha, and the god of shinobi were merely minor skirmishes. After the deaths of Hagoromo and Hamura, The Akatsuki of the moon, with their massive Tensigan, remained silent watchers. They had power enough to destroy the world, yet never dared set foot back in the shinobi world. The three great sacred lands have ancient traditions, and their three sages possess profound foundations, foretelling the future, discerning destiny, and being inscrutable as gods and demons, yet they can only remain confined to their sacred lands, daring not to act rashly. This world has never been simple, and they know it deeply. Thus, they dare not act rashly, dare not easily disrupt the hard-won balance of the shinobi world. And Yoru understood that better than anyone. It was true, his current strength surpassed that of Madara and Hashirama. But compared to the real monsters, he still had a ways to go. The sages of the three great sacred lands. The sage of six paths in the pure land. Akatsuki Ishiki, licking his wounds in a dimensional space. And the far-off alien Akatsuki clans who might descend upon Earth at any time. A wise man does not stand under a crumbling wall. The first one to stick their neck out is always the one shot down. Until his grand plans were fully in place, until he reached the pinnacle, Yoru had chosen to proceed with careful restraint. The shinobi world is vast. Far more vast than just the 5 great nations and a few minor villages. Even I can't do everything you think I can. Even if I hadn't stepped in today, Konoha would never have fallen to the 3 of you. Let's not forget, Minato's son has already been chosen by the toads of Mount Myaboku as their next child of prophecy. Do you think they'd just sit and watch? Mere Mount Myaboku, the Raikage growled, but even he couldn't hide the hesitation in his voice. Everyone knew the 3 great sacred lands were on a whole different level. Even the 5 great nations were wary of getting on their bad side. Sometimes, knowing your limits is the only way to avoid paying a price you can't afford. Yoru's voice remained calm as his gaze drifted toward the distant forest. He could already envision Fugaku reaching the front lines and crushing Kumo's elite troops. 3,000 elite shinobi dead. It'll weaken Kumo for a few years at most. But if the 3 of you die as well, what do you think that means for Konohagakure? It would be like a tiger losing its claws, a swordsman losing his blade, a ninja without chakra. Without military strength, Konohagakure will become a fat slab of meat, ripe for the picking, especially now, right after a major war. I'd say, give it a month, and the entire land of lightning might be devoured. Bastard. That future. That price. That fate. For the man who had inherited the title of Raikage from his father, the one who dreamed of building Kumo into the greatest hidden village, that was an unacceptable outcome. Yuki Yoru. The Raikage snarled, eyes burning. What the hell do you want? This man's power was no longer something he could contend with. If Yoru had the strength to kill them outright, but instead stood here talking so much, it could only mean that they still held something he wanted. Something more valuable than crushing the land of lightning. Like Konohagakure and the land of lightning becoming vassals to Kirigakure. Exploitation of their industry, commerce, population, and resources. A new site for unethical human experiments and soul research. I simply don't want to see people with potential waste away due to ignorance and bad intel. Yoru shrugged. The Raikage's eyes were filled with rage and unwillingness. Deep down, he wanted nothing more than to cut Yoru into pieces, to annihilate this bastard threatening his homeland. His pride and honor screamed at him to refuse. But the weight of responsibility, as Raikage, as son, as protector of his people, crushed down on him like a mountain. The land of lightning will not fall in my hands, and it will not become someone's colony. Naturally, Yoru replied, his tone easy. I've always respected the customs and autonomy of different lands. I'm not some greedy capitalist. In fact, you could take Konoha as your model. At most, I'll just transfer a few experimental policies and reforms to your territory, things not quite ready to be tested in the land of water. Aside from that, I won't interfere too much in your domestic affairs. For instance, I'll implement the same policies from the land of water here, mutual benefit and shared development. So, Raikage, do you want to die and watch the land of lightning carved up from the pure land? Or stand beside me and secure your nation's future? The choice is yours. Do I even have a choice? The Raikage muttered. After a long silence, his towering frame seemed to deflate. He slumped to the ground. Eyes fixed on the sky, he saw flashes of the past, his father, the 3rd Raikage, holding off 10,000 Iwagakure shinobi alone, entrusting the village to him before falling in battle. And now. I hope you mean every word you said, the Raikage whispered bitterly, closing his eyes. Of course. I always keep my promises. Yoru smiled, producing a scroll from his sleeve and handing it to the Raikage. All the preliminary terms are listed here. If you hurry to the front lines, you might still be able to bring 1 or 2,000 of your shinobi home. Oh, and one piece of advice. Don't take your tailed beasts into battle unless it's absolutely necessary. There are a lot of people in the shinobi world watching them, people Kumo can't afford to provoke. If you don't want to lose them and force me to kill them, keep them home. Also, if you're still interested in using dojutsu to refine your lightning release armor, your country actually has a dojutsu clan. The Chinook clan. In terms of strength, they're not necessarily weaker than the Sharingan. The reason they've disappeared lies with your own daimyo. If you want dojutsu, start with them. The Chinook clan. The Raikage blinked. He'd never even heard of that clan. But if Yura mentioned them, then they must be real. Maybe, just maybe, Konohagakure could develop its own Kekkei Genkai after all. He clutched the scroll tightly, took a deep breath, and then burst into lightning, racing into the distance. The two Jinchuriki, now freed from their restraints, looked uneasily at Yoru. Once they were sure he wouldn't make any sudden moves, they rushed to follow the Raikage. Yoru smiled faintly, then glanced toward a certain corner of the forest. A pale yellow beam of light engulfed him, and he vanished. Long after they were all gone, a pair of black and red eyes remained in the shadows, filled with a storm of conflicting emotions. He definitely noticed you, Obito. I know. He took the brunt of the reverse summoning spatial backlash directly. His grasp of space-time ninjutsu has only deepened. Obito's eye narrowed with a bitter smile. He never even considered me a threat. To him, I'm just a clown. But that's our chance, Black Zetsu said, voice excited. Arrogance is the downfall of the strong. If we can seize this moment, we might turn the tide. Besides, we're only one Kekkei Genkai away from completion. But can Nagato really hold off Yuki Yoru? Toby asked, uncertain. He crushed the fourth Raikage and two perfect Jinchuriki like they were nothing. If it's raw power. I know someone. Black Zetsu fell silent for a long moment. With that person, we might not defeat Yoru, but stalling him. Definitely possible. There's someone else that powerful in the shinobi world. Obito frowned. Are you sure we can control them? This is the trump card Madara left me. I've never wanted to use it unless absolutely necessary. And as for control, that's not a problem. Because that person is Uchiha's ultimate weapon. Chapter 210, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 210. The Uchiha clan's ultimate weapon. Black Zetsu's words left Obito stunned. The Uchiha clan had something like that. How have I never heard of it? In that genjutsu space where Madara passed on his knowledge, he had given Obito everything, Inyan release, the legends of the shinobi world, foundational ninja techniques, and more. He had intended to mold Obito into his successor, another Madara Uchiha, so that he could act in Madara's name in the shinobi world. And Obito had not disappointed him. During that time, he had absorbed a tremendous amount of knowledge. He had mastered ninjutsu, fire release, Inyan release, and internalized all kinds of shinobi legends and historical secrets. He could even summon the Nine Tails. Aside from his different eyes, he was a genuine Madara Uchiha of this era. And yet, with all that knowledge, he had never heard of any ultimate weapon hidden within the Uchiha clan. If such a weapon had existed, and it rivaled the strength of Yuki Yoru, why would Madara have lost to Hashirama Senju? Seems Madara didn't tell you, Black Zetsu said darkly. Not surprising. That ultimate weapon isn't an object, it's a person. Obito narrowed his lone eye, suspicious. Black Zetsu went on. During the Warring States period, there was a Mangekyo Sharingan wielder within the Uchiha clan whose dojutsu was so unique that the rest of the clan raised him as a weapon, a living tool to fight the Senju. But as time went on, his power grew so immense that other clans began to fear him. Eventually, the Senju allied with the other clans and sealed him away. As for Madara, his situation was complicated. His fight with Hashirama wasn't just for supremacy, it was personal. And frankly, that ultimate weapon probably wasn't someone Madara had much affection for. I see, a living weapon of war, Obito murmured. His blood-red Sharingan gleamed faintly. From Madara's few vague words about the Warring States period, Obito had already gathered that the wars of that time were far more brutal than any modern shinobi war. If this ultimate weapon had activated his Mangekyo during that era, and was raised as the clan's countermeasure against the Senju, then if Obito could get his hands on that power, his entire plan's success rate would skyrocket. Where is that person sealed? Within the land of fire, Black Zetsu replied. Konohagakure's elite troops were pushing hard against Konoha's defensive line. But the difference in both numbers and power was undeniable. Even combining Uchiha Setsuna and Danzo's forces, they barely had 1,000 shinobi. Add in scattered reinforcements from Konoha, and they were still outnumbered and outmatched by the organized, tactical assault of Konohagakure's 3,000 elite. Luckily, they were on defense. By sacrificing territory and slowing the advance with explosive tags, barrier traps, and terrain control, Konoha was able to delay the enemy until reinforcements arrived, until Uchiha Fugaku appeared. In truth, Fugaku alone couldn't turn the tide of a battle of this scale. But his very presence on the front lines, paired with the absence of the Raikage and the Jinchuriki who had gone to assassinate him, sent a ripple of panic through the Kumo ranks. Why is Uchiha Fugaku here? Where's the fourth Raikage? Weren't the Raikage, Killer Bee, and the Two Tails supposed to ambush and kill Fugaku? Don't tell me the Raikage has already. Impossible. That's the fourth Raikage and two perfect Jinchuriki. They couldn't have lost. No way. It has to be Genjutsu. Or a shadow clone. This Fugaku must be a bluff, meant to keep Konoha's morale up. Right. Everyone stay calm. The Raikage is probably already deep in Konoha's core. Don't waver, charge. Kumogakure's shinobi were clearly shaken. The commander, Dodai, barked orders in an effort to stabilize morale. No matter what happened to the Raikage, he thought grimly, we still have the numbers advantage. We can break Konoha's lines. Whatever happens next, we'll deal with it then. But the moment Fugaku activated Susanoo, all of that morale shattered. The Raikage has fallen. Konoha shinobi, follow me. Attack. His booming command echoed across the battlefield as Fugaku, cloaked in a fully armored Stage 4 Susanoo, surged forward like a god of war. Even though Stage 4 Susanoo wasn't enough to fight the very strongest shinobi head-to-head, on a battlefield of this scale, it was devastating. Its defense was virtually impenetrable, explosive tags, senbon, shuriken, even high-level techniques couldn't break through. Its sword attacks packed the destructive force of A-rank jutsu with every swing. Its massive, terrifying presence delivered a psychological shock so strong that the Kumo ranks began to break. Meanwhile, on the Konoha side, their morale soared. Our Hokage has arrived. Inspired by Fugaku's presence and his rallying cry, the Konoha shinobi surged forward, their spirits ignited like a raging fire. Flames blazed. Lightning flashed. Ninjutsu exploded in every direction. Though outnumbered, Konoha fought like lions. Because in any ninja village, the Kage is the pillar. The core of faith. The symbol of strength. And Fugaku's announcement that the Raikage had fallen was enough to crush that pillar for Kumogakuure. Once that faith broke, it didn't matter whether you had 3,000 or 300. 3,000 soldiers with no will to fight collapse faster than a disciplined few hundred. A collapsing army is like wildfire. Once it spreads, unstoppable. The battlefield became a slaughterhouse. Screams echoed. Heads flew. Kumogakuure shinobi fell by the dozens. Dodai shouted orders, trying to regroup, but it was like trying to hold back a flood with bare hands. The shinobi world had always been this way, different from modern warfare. In mass battles, high-level fighters were everything. They weren't just the strongest weapons, they were symbols of hope and fear. Just look at Megakure in the Second Shinobi War, or Kirigakure in the Third. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Uchiha Setsuna stood behind Fugaku's massive Susanoo, elated. He weaved signs rapidly and launched 7 or 8 blazing fireballs across the battlefield, each one perfectly timed to strike when enemies were exposed. Every blast led to another scream. Bodies burned. Heads rolled. And with each enemy that fell, Setsuna's bloodlust surged. This is it. This is the feeling I've been chasing. He unleashed one fire jutsu after another, eyes locked on Fugaku's towering figure. As he watched the Susanoo engulf his clan leader, it overlapped with a deeper memory in his heart. The year the first Hokage fought Uchiha Madara. Their ancestor fell in defeat. Afterward, the Uchiha were sidelined, pushed out of power by the Senju-controlled Hokage. Tobirama's policies, the treatment of their clan under every Hokage. Setsuna had never forgotten. Back then, I couldn't protect our clan's ancestor. Couldn't help Madara seize the Hokage title. But now that Fugaku is the 5th Hokage, and the Uchiha rise again, this might be our only chance. To restore the Uchiha's glory. To create the strongest Konoha. This is our duty. Kill them all. Consumed by zeal, Setsuna charged madly across the battlefield. His 3-tomo Sharingan spun violently, teetering on the brink of evolution, his terrifying strength stunning even Danzo, who had just arrived to support the counterattack. Holy crap. What the hell, Setsuna? Danzo had studied this radical Uchiha extensively, after all, he'd inherited every bit of intel from the second Hokage. But even he hadn't expected this level of combat prowess. How is this guy in his 60s? With this drive and chakra, you'd think he was in his prime. Still, surprise aside, they were on the same side today. And the more firepower, the better. Fueled by Setsuna's ferocity and Fugaku's Susanoo, Konoha's momentum exploded. Kumogakuure was in full retreat, morale collapsing. It's already gotten this far. The 4th Raikage arrived late, staring grimly at the chaotic battlefield. B. Do it. Got it, bro. Killer Bee leapt high into the air, mid-leap, his form erupted in semi-tailed beast mode. A dark ball of chakra began forming in his mouth. That chakra. Wait, what? A tailed beast bomb. The moment it began forming, everyone on the battlefield could feel the surge of violent chakra. Dodai's face lit up with shock, then joy. No panic. Don't be afraid. That's Killer Bee, it's the Raikage. They've returned. Hold the line. We've got our Kage back. He let them go. Fugaku's eyes narrowed. He had assumed Yuki Yoru would eliminate them completely. But now. Fifth Hokage, what now? Hyuga Hayashi muttered, brows furrowed. They'd seen the Raikage's strength. It was above Fugaku's. And he had two perfect Jinchuriki at his side. One-on-one, tailed beasts weren't unbeatable. But in large-scale battles, one-tailed beast bomb could annihilate hundreds. That's why they were treated like nuclear deterrents. Don't panic. I trust the Mizukage won't let us down, Fugaku said firmly. He took a deep breath. His eyes flared. Susanoo surged back into existence, engulfing his body in destruction incarnate. He leapt high into the air, then hurled Susanoo's sword straight at the tailed beast bomb. Boom. The sword and bomb collided midair, unleashing a blast that shattered the sky. A pillar of flame soared from the plains, a thunderous shockwave blasting through the battlefield. Trees bent. People shielded their eyes. Dodai. Fourth Raikage. And B. Yujito. The Raikage and the Jinchuriki landed next to Dodai, who looked ecstatic. Of course they're alive. With power like that, how could they lose? Konoha was just playing mind games. Raikage-sama. Fugaku declared your defeat, it crushed our morale. That's how Konoha got the upper hand. But now that you're back, with B and Yujito, there's no way we can lose. Konoha had under 1,000 shinobi left. Kumogakure still had over 2,000. Even with Susanoo, they had the advantage, the Raikage and two perfect Jinchuriki. Even if it became a brutal slugfest, they would win. Dodai was practically trembling with excitement. Time to crush Konoha. Issue the order, prepare to withdraw. Yeah. Let's Fini, wait, what? Dodai spun, stunned. Raikage-sama, did you say withdraw? That's right. Full retreat. The Raikage's voice was final. In a flash of thunder, he leapt onto the battlefield. Lightning crackled around his body. His blonde hair stood on end. The strongest lightning release armor reactivated. Fugaku and the others tensed, expecting battle. But the Raikage said nothing. Instead, he discreetly infused chakra into the scroll Yuki Yoru had given him. Seriously now. If this keeps going, we're just going to suffer pointless casualties. A calm voice echoed from the sky. A figure descended slowly, overlooking the battlefield from above. Everyone looked up. The fourth Mizukage. Robes fluttering in the wind. Blue and white casa hat. That familiar, handsome face. Yuki Yoru. Of course, he said with a faint smile, if anyone's still feeling reckless, I'm more than happy to join in myself. But, how about doing me this one favor? Let's end this battle here. Chapter 211, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 211. Land of Fire, Southeastern Front, Kazama Valley, former Kirigakure battlefield. Years ago, Yuki Yoru had sealed this place in ice. Though time and human efforts, mostly Konoha shinobi retrieving bodies, had gradually thawed the glacial terrain, the valley remained a lifeless wasteland. Obito stood silently, eyes grave, surveying his surroundings. The ice release used here had utterly annihilated everything, ninja, animals, even plant life. Nothing was spared. This place wouldn't recover for many years to come. In terms of devastation, it was on par with the deserts of the Wind Country. The Uchiha clan's ultimate weapon is sealed here. Obito asked quietly. More precisely, Black Zetsu replied, deep beneath Kazama Valley. After defeating her, the Senju, Uzumaki, and Sarutobi clans worked together to ensure she'd never be found. They buried her deep underground, beneath layers of soil and sealing jutsu. Without White Zetsu's unique tracking capabilities and the intel from Lord Madara, we never would have located her. Underground, huh? Obito scanned the terrain. There was no trace of any barrier or sealing formation. Clearly, the Senju and their allies had gone to great lengths to make the site completely undetectable. But how the hell are we supposed to dig her out? What, am I supposed to split open the entire valley? Like some mythical hero rescuing a goddess from the mountain? Black Zetsu seemed to guess his thoughts. I can sense her presence, but due to the sealing technique, I can't pull her up. That's where you come in. Kamui's ability to phase through space, and even project into real-world locations, was ideal for accessing sealed zones like this. Obito nodded. No point wasting time. Let's do it. Black and White Zetsu slithered into the ground, guiding Obito to the hidden seal. Upon arrival, Obito's eyes narrowed. There was nothing visibly different about this place. The stone looked the same as everywhere else. But something about the air, its stillness, its weight, told him this was it. A space-time sealing technique. No wonder she completely vanished after being sealed. Buried this deep, and locked behind a special space-time barrier, no one but an Uchiha with Kamui-like abilities, and the necessary intel, could ever hope to break it. Fortunately, for Obito Uchiha, the reincarnation of Madara and would-be second sage of Six Paths, this wasn't a problem. Releasing seal formula. This was a unique jutsu Obito had developed by modifying the tailed beast extraction seal. It was designed specifically to bypass complex spacetime locks, like those used by Minato or Yuki Yoru. As he activated it, the rock walls shimmered with strange energy. Suddenly, a pale yellow crystal prism emerged from the stone. Roughly 2 meters wide and tall, it gleamed like amber, set flush into the cliff wall. Suspended inside was a young girl in traditional Uchiha robes. Her long black hair flowed down her back. The blue battle robes she wore were tattered in places. Bandages were wrapped around her legs. Shackles, now unlocked, hung loosely at her ankles. She clutched a blood-stained short blade in her hand. Her eyes were closed, but her delicate face exuded an intense, chilling aura of killing intent. Obito frowned slightly. This is the Uchiha clan's so-called ultimate weapon. A little girl. This is who I'm supposed to use to defeat Yuki Yoru. He shot a glance at Black Zetsu, suspicion in his gaze. Black Zetsu, silent for a moment, finally said, her dojutsu is unusual. Though she's a girl, her ocular power rivals that of Lord Madara. Your concern shouldn't be whether she's strong enough. You should be thinking about how to control her. She's the strongest weapon of a century ago, and now she's yours to wield. Obito didn't respond immediately. His Mangekyo eyes studied the crystalline seal closely. No doubt, it was a masterwork of sealing arts, created by the Senju, Uzumaki, and several other clans. Even with all of Madara's techniques at his disposal, Obito had to admit, it was impressive. Still, time had weakened it. For someone of Obito's level, it was no longer difficult to dismantle. He activated his Mangekyo, and with a surge of dense released chakra, intricate cursed seals lit up across the crystal's surface. A few breaths later, the entire crystal shattered into shimmering chakra dust and vanished. Obito stepped forward. But before he could approach the girl, her eyelashes twitched. Then, her eyes snapped open. Twin spirals of blood-red Mangekyo Sharingan locked onto his. Susanoo. Her voice rang out, cold and sharp. A torrent of ocular power burst from her eyes like a tidal wave. The air froze. A skeletal red arm materialized, wrapping around her protectively. Her Susanoo formed a giant fist and hurled a punch directly at Obito. Boom. Dust exploded everywhere as her punch landed. But Obito emerged from the rubble unscathed. She furrowed her brows. Her Mangekyo spun rapidly, emitting more chakra. Huh. Their gazes met in midair. The girl clearly saw Obito's Mangekyo Sharingan beneath his spiral mask, and a hint of confusion appeared in her eyes. In her memory, she was battling the Senju, Sarutobi, and other individuals who had attacked her. No, those guys had also called upon the Uzumaki clan and had sealed her. And this scene now is. Looking at the Mangekyo under Obito Uchiha's spiral mask, the girl had already formed a logical conclusion in her mind. She remained silent for a moment, then pursed her lips, dispelling the Susanoo around her while lowering her head to Obito Uchiha. My apologies, the mission failed. Obito narrowed his eye. He could feel her aura, emotionless, robotic. She was like a puppet, or a machine. But after recalling Black Zetsu's briefing, he began to understand. Just like Black Zetsu had said. She was a tool. This chakra. The girl finally looked up. Her expression, still distant, flickered. Her senses picked up on it, Obito's chakra. Beneath the Uchiha signature, there was something else. Something that made her scowl. Senju chakra. What are you? That question is meaningless, Obito said coldly. But if you insist. I'm just a man who lives in hell. Broken by reality. Abandoned by the world. His cryptic tone struck a nerve. The girl stared at him. 3 crimson tomo spiraled in each of their eyes, hovering in silence. Where are the others? She asked flatly. Others? Obito scoffed. He stepped closer, looking down on her from above. Behind his mask, his Sharingan gleamed with disdain. You mean those decayed fools who lost themselves to greed and politics? Those who groveled before their enemies, who served as pawns for other clans, who forgot what it means to be Uchiha. They're not my kin. And you? I expected more from the Uchiha's ultimate weapon. But you're just another relic. A soulless puppet with no will of your own. You don't even deserve to be awakened. You've got nice eyes, sure, but what good are they, if there's nothing behind them? Go back to sleep. You're worthless. No self-awareness. Uchiha's so-called legend. His bitter words, and the odd blend of Senju and Uchiha chakra on his body, stirred something inside her. Her Mangekyo spun faster. Though the weather was fair, a single cloud drifted across the sky, casting a deep shadow over the valley, plunging the place into cold gloom. Obito's heart skipped a beat. Then everything changed. The world around him shifted. The sky turned crimson, the ground gray and dead. The air became suffocating. Genjutsu space. Damn Genjutsu type dojutsu again. Even Kamui couldn't block Genjutsu. And among all his past failures, it was Genjutsu that tripped him up, Shisui, Fugaku, Yuki Yoru. And now her. This is my Tsukimi space, she said coolly, stepping out from the shadows. Here, I control time, space, and mass. Her eyes bore into his. Tell me everything you know. Everything that has happened to the Uchiha clan. Obito smirked. Interesting. Even a tool can start forming thoughts, huh? He took a breath, then smiled darkly. Very well. If you're ready. I'll tell you. Your war with the Senju and Uzumaki ended a century ago. Everything you knew, your enemies, your world, it's all gone. The Uchiha you knew? Long dead. The Senju? Extinct. The ninja clans themselves aren't even the backbone of the world anymore. What? That finally broke her mask. Her eyes widened. Shock, confusion, even fear crept into her voice. What exactly happened? It's a long story, Obito said. But unable to resist her gaze, he began explaining, from the fall of the warring states, to the founding of the hidden villages, to the major wars of the past decades. He did, of course, mix in his own twisted worldview throughout. The more he spoke, the deeper the stunned expression on the girl's face became. She never imagined that after merely fighting a battle, a century had passed, and yet for her, it was just the blink of an eye. Everything had changed. Even her sworn enemies of old had become allies, creating a village. This kind of thing was simply a fantasy to her. Her eyes were filled with confusion, a fear of the unknown, of unfamiliar things, and even a doubt about her own existence. All in all, although ninja clans became ninja villages, and regions became countries, the essence of this world has not changed. Obito Uchiha looked at the girl whose expression was changing, and smiled faintly, knowing the changes in the world caused your numb heart to ripple a bit. Huh. It seems you have many stories. But it doesn't matter. War, greed, hatred, slaughter. This world, filled with despair and like hell, has no value in existing. Value. The girl murmured the word, to herself. Whether this world had value in existing, she didn't know, but her own value. She had extraordinary talent, awakening her Sharingan at a very young age. She awakened her Mangekyo Sharingan because her parents died on the battlefield. But it was precisely because of those eyes that her entire life changed. From that moment on, she became the Uchiha clan's most powerful weapon of war, the sharpest spear against the Senju and other ninja clans. Killing enemies on the battlefield was the value and meaning of her existence. But now, things were no longer the same. The Uchiha and Senju had made a century-long grand reconciliation, even becoming family. So what was the meaning of her existence? The girl fell silent. Hey. She suddenly looked up at Obito Uchiha. What do you think is the meaning of life? The meaning of life? Obito was startled, and a bright, moving smile unconsciously flashed in his mind. But soon, that smile dissipated like a bubble, replaced by the desperate image of Minato Namikaze piercing through his most beloved person. Obito remained silent for a long time, then scoffed, his tone ambiguous. There is no inherent meaning to life, but as long as you live, as long as you keep walking, you will find meaningful things, and embark on a valuable path. Even if that path is destined to be full of hardships and thorns, cruel and hollow. Chapter 212, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 212. Rin, she was once my only light. After losing Rin, the world I saw turned into nothing but pitch-black hell. This world is filled with ashes and devoid of hope. Even though I wore Madara's name and wandered the lands, everything I witnessed only made me believe it more deeply. I'm living in hell. A world soaked in despair has no value in existing. Even with the Sharingan in my eyes, I saw nothing, gained nothing. That's why I'll create a new world, a world filled with love, filled with peace, a world where Rin still exists. Obito no longer kept up the act of being Uchiha Madara in front of the girl. He revealed his true face, and his true purpose. Clearly, it had an effect. Someone who had been treated as a weapon since childhood, shackled by her clan, her era, the world, and reality, when placed into a new environment, what would she seek? Freedom. No, she sought to be needed. Just like Kimimaro once met Orochimaru, now Obito had met this girl. Disappointment with reality and denial of one's own life, paired with a new goal, Obito's tragic idealism, spoken like a melodramatic teen drowning in anguish, was, to the girl, a fatal kind of resonance. A sense of kinship she had never known. To think, you, once immortalized in the history books as a legend of the Uchiha clan, would show such an expression. Seems you two have your own story, Obito said, watching the silent girl, taking the initiative within the Tsukuyomi space. If you'd let me. I'd like to hear it. She trembled slightly but didn't respond. Instead, the scenery of the Tsukuyomi space began to shift. The once dull, dusky landscape took on color, the scenes of her childhood resurfaced. Uchiha Hikari, still a girl, laughed and played with friends. Her parents smiled at her. She helped old elders cross the road. That warm time passed all too quickly. She saw the mangled corpses of her parents. And it was then, Uchiha Hikari awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. From that day forward, those cursed eyes became the strongest weapon of the Uchiha clan. To counter the Senju, the girl, just a child, was thrown onto the battlefield. But as Zetsu had said before, age was never her weakness. Those eyes held powers that could shake nations. Yachihoko, 8,000 spears. A terrifying ocular ability that could mark a target and link chakra and consciousness across any distance, allowing her to transmit chakra to herself or others, and control others remotely once marked. To strengthen her further, her clan began implanting other dojutsu into her eyes, Tsukuyomi for supreme genjutsu, Amaterasu for lethal offense, and even Koto Amatsukami and Kagetsuchi for supplementary mastery over the battlefield. The depth of her power made Obito's expression shift. Her eyes could steal chakra, even steal other dojutsu. It made him anxious. Compared to her, even his vaunted Kamui seemed trivial. Worse yet, if he wasn't careful, his own power could be absorbed by her, and added to her own arsenal. No wonder she was called the Uchiha's ultimate weapon. If she keeps evolving, collecting the power of all Mangekyo, who on earth could possibly stop her? Obito's heart pounded. Yes, this was a monster worth betting on. Pair her with Nagato's would release Rinnegan, and maybe, just maybe, he could crush the myth of Yuki Yoru's invincibility. Even if they couldn't defeat him outright, they could stall him long enough to steal the Shikotsumyaku. Obito grinned internally. Within the Tsukuyomi space, her memories kept replaying. Over time, the girl lost even her name. To the Uchiha, she was no longer a person, just a blade, a tool against the Senju. Her name, Hikari, faded in countless battles and missions, replaced by a mocking title, Nameless. Battle after battle, war after war, hatred driving her until she became numb, just a puppet on the front lines of endless slaughter. Until, at last, she was sealed by the strongest of the Senju, alongside the Uzumaki and Sarutobi clans. The memory faded. What a despair-filled life. Obito's Sharingan glowed from behind his swirling mask. A world like this really has no value in existing. Only pain remains. That's why I have a plan, one that can change everything. Erase all the pain. Overturn this cursed reality. A plan. Hikari's eyes shimmered with disturbance. What plan? The infinite Tsukuyomi. Obito's voice carried a tinge of madness, his excitement unmistakable. Like your own inscription, Tsukuyomi. I'll reflect my dojutsu off the moon. All who are touched by the moonlight will be marked, even if they're indoors or avert their eyes, the mark will still take hold. But unlike your technique, mine will be cast over the entire world. Once I gather all 9-tailed beasts and resurrect the 10 tails, I'll become its Jinchuriki and awaken the ultimate eye, the Rinne Sharingan. Then I'll project its power onto the moon, casting the infinite Tsukuyomi. A world of dreams will descend, a world with no sorrow, no pain, no hatred. A world of perfect happiness. A dream world, a genjutsu. Hikari frowned. Isn't that fake? Fake. Obito chuckled. No, that's the future we truly desire. You, with your Mangekyo Sharingan, should know better than anyone what we can accomplish in a genjutsu world. Just like in this Tsukuyomi space, you are God here. Because you're the caster, you instinctively resist it. You instinctively call it false. But the infinite Tsukuyomi, it fuses illusion with reality. You'll live in a world where only love exists, and no pain ever touches you. How can that be fake? Besides, what even is reality? Obito's voice turned cold. The longer you live, the more you see, and the more painful it becomes. There is light, but wherever there is light, shadows will follow. To preserve peace, war will be waged. To protect love, hatred will be born. This cycle of cause and effect can never be severed. That is reality. Reality is hell. But the infinite Tsukuyomi will erase it. In that new world, there will only be victors. Only peace. Only love. That's the world I want to create. He looked straight at her. Weapon, no, Uchiha Hikari. Will you help me? To become your weapon, she asked. No. Obito shook his head. To become your own weapon. I've seen your past. I understand your pain. I've witnessed your strength. You already know this world is a lie, how many unspeakable missions you've done, how much blood you've spilled. And now, 100 years later, you awaken in a world you don't belong to. A weapon built for war, reborn into a world that no longer needs war. What are you now? What is your goal? Where do you stand? What will bring you peace? How do you find purpose in a world made of pain? Hikari's lips parted. But she had no answer. Those terrifying eyes that held monstrous chakra, were now filled with uncertainty. Where should I go? Where can I go? So, Obito extended a hand toward her. Let me help you. Let me free you from this false world and give you a place where you truly belong. You were always a weapon for your clan. But from now on, you'll be my comrade. She closed her eyes. After a long pause, she exhaled softly. The icy expression on her face melted into something warmer. She smiled. I am Uchiha Hikari. And I am Uchiha Obito. Land of Fire, final battlefield between Konohagakure and Konoha. Even though everyone present could tell this was only a chakra projection of Yuki Yoru, not a real body, no one dared move. His name alone was a shadow that loomed over the entire shinobi world. Especially Konoha. Even though Konoha and Kirigakure were now allies, practically bros, as some would joke, thousands of Konoha shinobi had died at Yuki Yoru's hands. His name struck fear deep enough to make children stop crying just hearing it. Naturally, Konoha, already on the defensive, had no reason to reject a ceasefire. But Konohagakure. Mizukage. The fourth Raikage's voice was tense, his chakra-cloaked lightning armor sparking wildly. Behind him, countless Kumo shinobi gripped kunai, hands poised to form hand seals. Two Jinchuriki were ready to release their tailed beasts, their chakra already bubbling. But in the end, the fourth Raikage unclenched his fists. The lightning around him faded. Far above, on a massive tree in the distant forest, a vortex of space twisted open. Obito and Hikari stepped out, gazing toward the battlefield where a single man's projection had ended an entire war. Hikari looked surprised. Her gaze lingered on Yuki Yoru's fading image. That wasn't even a clone, was it? Just a chakra image, yet that alone held such power. Yeah, Obito said. That's our greatest enemy. The strongest person in the shinobi world. I've fought him several times, even after using every trump card I had, I couldn't bring him down. If we want to complete our plan, he's our biggest obstacle. Is he the one who destroyed your eye? Hikari asked, eyes flicking to Obito's single mangekyo behind the mask. Kamui, that technique was rare even among the clan. Only in ancient records. One of the strongest mangekyo abilities. And if you, with both Kamui and strongest Susanoo, couldn't beat him, and even lost an eye, then yeah. He's a problem. Obito fell silent. Strongest Susanoo? Dual Kamui? Hey, he didn't even have that. Despite having the Mangekyo for years, he still didn't know what it felt like to summon the Gundam. He wasn't even a proper Uchiha at this point. His other eye had once belonged to Kakashi. But after the battle at Higashimatsuyama, that eye had vanished. And Kakashi had died at Yuki Yoru's hand. So most likely, the eye had been destroyed, or taken, by him. Damn that bastard. So what now? Hikari asked, itching for a fight. Even among the battle-hardened Uchiha, her thirst for combat ran deeper than most. The thought of someone as powerful as Yuki Yoru had her blood surging. Since he stepped in to stop the war, that means it's over. Once it's officially done, I'll announce a Chunin exam under the name of the fourth Kazekage. Obito's eyes glinted darkly. At that time, our organization's public leader will attend, and you'll go with him. Together, you'll target Yuki Yoru. An assassination mission? No. A distraction. To give me the chance I need. In recent years, Yuki Yoru's strength had only continued to grow. The battle at the Land of Iron had shattered Obito's confidence. Even with Uchiha Hikari and Nagato on his side, Obito didn't feel secure. And who could blame him? Even when Nagato summoned the Geto statue at full power, Yuki Yoru had one-shot him. Even without personally witnessing his combat prowess, just hearing Zetsu's description was enough to feel the overwhelming pressure. Adding to that the Nine-Tails rampage that night, that world-shattering chakra attack. This time, the goal remained clear. Steal the Shikotsumyaku. Chapter 213, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 213. Konohagakure launched a surprise assault on Konohagakure. Cloud forces surged like an unstoppable wave, smashing through the Land of Fire's defenses. Konohagakure's army pushed deep into Konoha territory. The village's forces retreated again and again, suffering heavy losses. The fourth Raikage personally led the charge, accompanied by two Jinchuriki, executing a decapitation strike. With both sides clashing head-on, one of the largest large-scale military confrontations in modern shinobi history ignited like wildfire. And then, just as abruptly, a peace treaty was signed. The war ended. The news spread like wildfire across the entire shinobi world. No one could believe it. One moment, the two villages were trading insults at press conferences. The next, they were going all out on the battlefield, full-scale war. And the scale of the fight was shocking. 3,000 elite shinobi, the fourth Raikage himself, and two-tailed beast wielders. This kind of force was capable of wiping an entire nation off the map. And Konoha had Uchiha Fugaku, a Mangekyo wielder of their own. Everyone expected a bloody conflict without end. And yet, like a powder keg snuffed out in an instant, the flames vanished. Yuki Yoru, it was that guy again. When the details began to emerge, the shinobi world fell into stunned silence. He hadn't lifted a finger. He hadn't even displayed his power. Just by showing his face, he stopped both Konoha and Kumo from fighting. Is this the power of the strongest man alive? The ceasefire didn't just end the conflict, it elevated Yuki Yoru's prestige to new heights. And because he had intervened, the truce between Konoha and Kumo was considered balanced, with no formal reparations demanded from either side. Neither village objected. Konoha had clearly been the weaker party. If not for Yuki Yoru's intervention, they might have been completely wiped out. What grounds did they have to demand reparations? As for Kumo-gakure, even though they invested massive resources and lost hundreds of shinobi without gaining anything in return, this was the brutal reality of the ninja world. If you're weak, you follow the will of the strong. If you're weak, you survive only by the strong's mercy. The only consolation was perhaps this. Kumo-gakure had successfully submitted to Yuki Yoru. Yes, what seemed like a humiliation, turned out to be something else entirely. After returning to the hidden cloud and studying the scroll Yuki Yoru had given him, the fourth Raikage was overjoyed. The scroll didn't just contain proposals for joint village-level development plans that could benefit Kumo's future growth, it also included something even more extraordinary. A summoning contract for the fourth holy land, Shadow Island. And so, in the end, neither side had much to argue about regarding the peaceful resolution. Only one withered, monkey-faced old man, imprisoned deep within the ANBU's underground cells, tugged at his goatee in torment. If not for me, Cloud would never have gone to war with Konoha. If not for me, Konoha wouldn't have had to rely on Yuki Yoru. It's all my fault. I'm guilty. I deserve to die. The former third Hokage cried out from his cell. But everyone who heard his screams responded not with pity, but with scorn and contempt. A man devoured by his lust for power, now discarded by history. This pitiful display wasn't repentance, it was merely the fear of punishment. Though the final battle between Konoha and Kumo never erupted, the brush with annihilation made the threat all too real for Konoha's upper leadership. And everyone knew who was to blame. Sarutobi Hiruzen. Without question, once the dust fully settled, punishment for the old, senile Hokage would come. Maybe he wouldn't be executed outright. But at minimum, he'd be stripped of all political rights, and the Sarutobi clan would pay a steep price, whatever Uchiha Fugaku felt was appropriate. But none of that mattered to Yuki Yoru, far away in Kirigakure. If this were any other day, he might have watched this monkey show just for fun. But right now, he had far more important things to do. Kirigakure, rear mountain of the Soul Society's private sector. No need to be nervous. Just follow the procedure. Yuki Yoru smiled kindly, his voice calm, speaking to the visibly tense Ringo Amiri. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the stone platform above, where a ring of white Haori-clad captains stood watching from on high. The pressure was overwhelming. Amiri was silently cursing herself for volunteering. Why did I raise my hand? Why did I ask to test this myself? The blood artery, moving blood guys, test. A year ago, Yuki Yoru had perfected and distributed the blood venae, stilled blood guys, to the first batch of Quincy's. And over the past year, those Quincy's had reaped immense benefits. Blood venae, stilled blood guys, didn't require activation, it autonomously protected its user through a dense layer of spirit particles surrounding the body. This alone had revolutionized battlefield survivability. For Amiri, who had long doubted her place and progress, the results were deeply affirming. She had even gone 30 minutes against Hozuki Mangetsu, one of Kirigakure's top swordsmen. Though she eventually lost, her spiritual power exhausted and her blood venae dissipated, it had been a breakthrough. But despite endless training, she still couldn't surpass Mangetsu. Their kenjutsu was already roughly 3-7 in favor of Mangetsu, and with the added boost of the Hozuki clan's secret techniques, no matter how hard Ringo Amiri tried, she couldn't defeat Mangetsu Hozuki, even though what she trained was lightning release spiritual power, which countered Mangetsu Hozuki's techniques. Now, however, the blood artery, moving blood guys, offered a new path. Unlike the blood vein, the blood artery required the user to fuse their spiritual power with the natural energy around them, channeling that power internally to explosively augment their strength. Much like Sage Mode. But without expert guidance, mastering this power was nearly impossible. To get ahead of the curve and become the first to wield it, Emiri volunteered. And now, well, here she was. Pick any squad captain. Then unleash your full power, no holding back. Yuki Yoru's words were gentle, but Emiri's scalp tingled. Before becoming a Quincy, she had only heard of the Godai captains. Now, after awakening her spiritual powers, she understood their strength. To someone without Ryatsu, they're like looking at the moon from the bottom of a well. To someone with Ryatsu, they're like a mayfly gazing up at the heavens. And now she had to fight one. On purpose. This was insanity. Still, there was no backing out now. I choose. Emiri's eyes swept across the captains above. 2nd Division Captain, Uchiha Shisui. No way. Despite being the youngest captain, his strength was terrifying. Especially with holification added to his powers, he was second only to Yuki Yoru himself. Even with both blood artery and vein, Emiri didn't stand a chance. She moved her gaze away quickly. Shisui remained expressionless, as if he had expected it. 4th Division Captain, Senju Tsunade. Emiri glanced at the busted blonde with folded arms and winced. Everyone knew Tsunade was once the best medical nin in the world. But those who'd trained with her knew, healing wasn't her real specialty. That monstrous strength, one punch could level a mountain. Emiri's slim frame wouldn't last even with 10 layers of armor. She looked away again. 6th Division Captain, Hozuki Mangetsu. Nope. Same problem. 7th Division Captain, Uzumaki Kushina. Former Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Sealing techniques off the charts. But also a deadly taijutsu fighter, trained with Tsunade, no less. Still not an option. One glance down the row, monsters, every one of them. She finally settled on the last two. 12th Division Captain Orochimaru and 13th Division Captain Yagura. After a short pause, Emiri fixed her eyes on Orochimaru's predatory smile. I respectfully request a match with the 12th Division Captain. Oh. You picked me. Orochimaru grinned, leaping down lightly, tongue flicking across his lips. How delightful. I'll get to experience the fourth's new masterpiece firsthand. Though it was just a test, Emiri was determined to give it her all. If she fought Yagura instead, his mirror water clone techniques might break her spirit entirely. All things considered, Orochimaru seemed like the safer choice. Let's see how strong this new technique really is. She took a deep breath, then brought her hands together in a seal. A red glow, dense and vein-like, spread from her neck across her entire body. Power surged. She didn't move immediately. Instead, she drew her twin lightning blades, Kiba, and let them hum with electricity. Interesting. Orochimaru's golden eyes gleamed. Blood vein forms a spiritual particle barrier over the skin. But this blood artery draws in spirit particles from the atmosphere and channels them into the user's body. Just like Sage Mode, no, even more stable. Because the chakra networks regulate the flow, there's no risk of losing control. Even safer than cursed seals. Exactly. Yuki Yoru nodded. But if it were that simple, I wouldn't have spent so long researching it. Emiri, show them. Yes, fourth. Lightning crackled. And in a flash, she disappeared from Orochimaru's vision. Boom. A crushing pain exploded in Orochimaru's abdomen, the impact as powerful as a taijutsu specialist's strike, laced with lightning paralysis and concussive burst. He was blasted into the stone wall. Above, several captains raised their eyebrows. The gathered Quincy and Shinigami gasped. That kind of burst speed. Orochimaru groaned, pulling himself from the rubble, staring at the girl cloaked in electricity like the fourth Raikage himself. So it's like Sage Mode after all. As a disciple of Ryuchi Cave, he knew all about it. He couldn't use it himself, but he understood its value. The fact that Yuki Yoru had created a spiritual power version of Sage Mode, without side effects, without activation delay, it was priceless. Even from a research standpoint, you're a genius, Yuki Yoru. Orochimaru's voice turned sharp. Come, girl, show me how powerful this blood artery really is. The moment he spoke, Emiri vanished again. Physical speed, amplified several times. Faster again. Orochimaru's vertical pupils narrowed. He crossed his arms defensively. But too late. Emiri's speed outpaced even the lightning, and her strike shattered through his guard with raw force. Stunned. Spiritual power, amplified several times. The lightning paralyzed his movements. Emiri raised her sword to the heavens, channeling spiritual energy upward. Above, dark clouds gathered, lightning dancing between them. Twin blades crossed. Silver dragons roared. With a roar, she brought her weapon crashing down on the stunned Orochimaru. Lightning blade, thunder gate. Boom. Chapter 214, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 214. Under the amplification of the blood artery, moving blood guys, Ringo Amuri's thunderous lightning no longer resembled ordinary lightning-style attacks, it had transformed into a devastating force, almost equivalent in magnitude and destruction to lightning release, Kirin. Paralyzed by the lightning-infused spiritual power, Orochimaru couldn't move a muscle. All he could do was watch helplessly as the thunderbolt dropped from the clouds in a millisecond flash, engulfing his entire body in an apocalyptic surge. In an instant, everything went white. The deafening explosion seemed capable of splitting the earth apart. Blistering heat, surging electricity, and the fury of the heavens slammed down onto Orochimaru's form, engulfing the entire landscape in a blanket of destruction. The ground cracked and shattered, rocks burst apart. Every Quincy and Shinigami watching wore a look of pure disbelief. As one of the 7 ninja swordsmen, the lightning blade, Kiba was known to be capable of drawing power from nature itself. That much was common knowledge. But what it could draw was always limited, just a fraction, perhaps 1,000th, of natural lightning's strength. And yet, the destructive might Ringo Amuri unleashed just now. That was on par with forbidden jutsu. It doesn't just boost physical attributes and energy output, it even amplifies jutsu. Uzumaki Kushina's face was filled with awe. The strength of this amplification was no weaker than Sage Mode. And because it was a spiritual power-based attack, its destructive force might even surpass Senjutsu. Spiritual power's damage to the soul was unique to this new system, unparalleled even within the shinobi world. Sage Mode might be more versatile, but if you wanted sheer killing power, the threat posed by blood artery, moving blood guys, was on another level. As the overwhelming lightning finally began to dissipate, what remained of Orochimaru, one of the 3 legendary Sannin and captain of the 12th Division, was now a pitch-black, carbonized corpse. The thunderbolt had utterly obliterated him like a wrathful god smiting a mortal. The sight drew gasps of terror from the audience. This is. Amuri looked at the blackened husk with disbelief. She hadn't expected that even with her full power activated, the combination with blood artery would yield such terrifying results. Even Orochimaru had been taken down. But rather than elation, Amuri felt panic. Orochimaru wasn't just a squad captain, he was also one of Kirigakure's most important researchers. And she'd just vaporized him in a test. All right, Orochimaru, that's enough. Stop playing dead. Yuki Yoru sighed, glancing at the scorched corpse lying on the battlefield. Scared the poor girl half to death. If there was one thing Orochimaru was good at, aside from being creepy, it was not dying. Ever since becoming a Shinigami, his survivability had become near legendary. Frankly, anyone else trying to kill Orochimaru would need serious effort, and even then, only if he allowed it. Hearing Yoru's words, everyone turned to stare at the charred remains. And sure enough, just a few seconds later, the blackened husk cracked open. Orochimaru emerged, completely unharmed, licking his lips with that familiar unsettling smile. What an astonishing enhancement. He showed no concern for the unknown fluids dripping from his body. His golden eyes gleamed as he stared at Amuri's blood-veined figure. A several-fold increase in physical stats. Spiritual power surge. No side effects. No long delay like with natural energy. Comparable to a perfect Sage Mode. If paired with the blood vene's defense, then even the weakest Quincy would have the combat power of a seat officer-level Shinigami, or a Jonin-class ninja. It had only taken a few minutes of combat, but Orochimaru had already recognized the full potential of blood artery. A flawless amplification, with no recoil. Combined with the near-invincible defense of blood vene, capable of shrugging off even Jonin-level taijutsu, the implications were staggering. And the most terrifying part? Every Quincy could equip both blood. That meant, in the near future, every Quincy would have the strength of a Jonin-level shinobi. And how many Quincy's were there in the land of water right now? Hundreds. Thousands. No, over 10,000. Thanks to Yuki Yoru's personal endorsement and the backing of the daimyo of the land of water, Shadow Island, now revered as the fourth holy land, had gained widespread fame. The mystic sage Miroku, the Shadow Prophet, was now renowned throughout the shinobi world. Every day, dozens, if not hundreds, flocked to him to become Quincy under his guidance. Meaning, within just a few years, Yuki Yoru had amassed an elite army of 10,000 Jonin-level warriors. And in another few years? Or a decade? Unimaginable. Once the entire land of water became Quincy's, its population would be fully militarized. At that point, Yuki Yoru would possess the strongest military force in the entire shinobi world. Some might argue he already did, with the Godai 13 backing him, what more did he need? Well then, that's that. But this jutsu must be difficult to teach, no. Tsunade frowned, raising an important point. Blood artery is based on inscribing spiritual seals into the body's internal chakra network. It blends spiritual power with natural energy, forming a perfect sage mode that doesn't require years of training. But the thread of spiritual power with natural energy still exists. If the balance is broken, the resulting backlash could destroy the user's body, same as a failed sage transformation. Like turning to stone if you fail at toad sage mode. This statement sobered many of the Quincy's present. But even so, most still looked eager and excited. Amuri among them. From her perspective, a little risk for that kind of power was a no-brainer. The backlash only happened when the body was critically injured anyway. If you're already hurt enough for the backlash to matter, you're practically dead already. What was a bit of petrification in the face of that? Exactly. Yoru nodded. That risk existed in the early designs. If the internal balance broke during injury, it could send the user straight from critical condition to outright death. So I modified it. The blood vein works by guiding spiritual particles through the body's chakra network, anchoring them at pressure points and conducting energy through the bloodstream, forming a defensive spiritual shield. That design gave all Quincy's a significant boost in defense. But to me, the real value was in understanding the connection between human tissue and spiritual particles. That was the origin of blood artery. I used Sage mode as a reference, combining spiritual particles with natural energy. Over the course of a year, I optimized and refined the formula, resulting in what you see now. Most of the Quincy's and Shinigami looked completely lost. But those who understood, Orochimaru, Tsunade, and others, looked increasingly serious. They realized the technical barriers Yoru had broken through. How much time, effort, and sheer genius it had taken to go from nothing to perfection in just 1 year. From brain to lungs, to heart and stomach, these form the body's most crucial chakra centers, Yoru continued. These are collectively known as the 8 gates, also where chakra is most densely concentrated in the average shinobi. Quincy's aren't different from ninja. Both are living humans. One has chakra, the other has spiritual power. I use the 8 gates as anchor points, interlinked in synergy. As long as blood flows, as long as spiritual particles remain, as long as willpower endures, as long as those 8 points aren't shattered simultaneously, the user won't suffer any harm. The room went silent in awe. Even Orochimaru was stunned. So this really is a completely stable, perfectly compatible, zero side effect version of Sage mode, for Quincy's, he whispered, licking his lips. A breathtaking masterpiece. Well, not perfect, Yoru said modestly. It's a bit tricky to install. You can't learn blood artery as easily as blood vein, it's like the difference between learning a C-rank jutsu and an A-rank jutsu. And frankly, with power like this, that wasn't hard at all. If mastering an A-rank technique gave you perfect Sage mode, who wouldn't try? Even the Shinigami present looked jealous. They wanted this too, but unfortunately, this was exclusive to Quincy's. Still, the Shinigami weren't too bitter. They had their own trump cards, Kido, Zanpakuto releases, and more. But even so, the blood artery's debut was a total success. Now came the next step, training others. Luckily, that didn't require Yoru's personal involvement. Miroku, the sage of Shadow Island, would handle it all. With his current projects complete, Yoru took a moment to check in on the latest happenings in Konoha, and sent some guidance to Uchiha Fugaku. Uchiha Fugaku had an epiphany. With the war between Konoha and Kumo concluded, his first steps were to reinforce the Land of Fire's border defenses, distribute death and injury compensations, and reorganize the mission backlog. Finally, he began issuing commendations and promotions to those who had distinguished themselves, especially young talents. Even Uchiha Setsuna and Shimura Danzo received appointments. Appointed, Danzo as Deputy Director of ANBU, Advisor to the Hokage Council. Appointed, Akimichi Torafu as Deputy Head of the Mission Department. Appointed, Uchiha Setsuna as Head of the Mission Department. These announcements sent shockwaves through the senior Jonin community. Especially the appointment of Danzo. Most had assumed he'd be imprisoned, like Sarutobi Hiruzen. Instead, Fugaku promoted him. He didn't even care about Danzo's past actions against the Uchiha. He valued merit over grudges. And that shook Konoha to its core. Originally, everyone thought Fugaku would immediately purge the old regime, disbanding Root, centralizing all authority. But he didn't. He kept Root intact, and gave Danzo a new role. Even former Sarutobi loyalists began to hope. But the biggest shock came when Fugaku delivered the official punishment for Sarutobi Hiruzen. Accusations. Faulty decisions during the Third Shinobi War against Kirigakure. Letting Konoha's advantage against Iwagakure slip away. Allowing his clan to monopolize the village's economy. Causing housing prices to spike so high that even Jonin could barely afford apartments. Still, when it came to the Hiruzen treason incident, Fugaku ruled fairly. He declared that Hiruzen had not betrayed the village, that Kumo had acted with deceitful intent, and Hiruzen had been a victim. That verdict stunned Hiruzen. And it earned Fugaku even more respect. Most thought he would crush the old Hokage. Instead, he gave him an honorable conclusion. This is why Fugaku became the fifth Hokage. But only Fugaku himself knew just how viciously cunning Yoru's advice had been. Whether Hiruzen was innocent or not didn't matter. What mattered was that the Sarutobi clan returned everything they had taken. Their land. Their businesses. Their monopolies. As for their reputation, Konoha had hated them for a long time. With Hiruzen imprisoned and his crimes exposed, even if he wasn't guilty of treason, he was already seen by the public as a filthy, power-hungry old dog. Fugaku's maneuver accomplished everything. Earned trust from the Jonin. Gained respect from the leadership. Preserved public hatred toward the Sarutobi clan. Crushed Hiruzen's image permanently. A masterstroke. Fugaku could only marvel. My fourth Mizukage. You could dominate the world with power alone. But why the hell are you this good at politics too? Chapter 215, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 215. Snow drifted from the skies, winter had come. With the war between Konoha and Kumo finally at an end, the shinobi world entered a long overdue period of peace. To celebrate this hard-won tranquility, that year's New Year festival was unusually lively, the sky filled with dazzling fireworks as people tried to chase away the lingering shadows and sorrow left by war. But no matter how much they masked it, the pain left behind by war still lingered, etched into their bodies and hearts. Once the strongest village in the ninja world, Konoha had suffered greatly. Its population and shinobi forces had both fallen to their lowest levels since the founding of the village. Even compared to the other great nations, it was now frail and weakened. Fortunately, the current fifth Hokage, Uchiha Fugaku, possessed a sharp political mind. By aligning himself firmly with Yuki Yoru, Konoha, though diminished, was still able to retain its seat among the major powers of the shinobi world. Iwagakure was still licking its wounds from the disaster involving the Box of Ultimate Bliss. Sunagakure, under Obito's puppet regime of blood sand, appeared to be making steady progress, but its internal strength and foundation were being drained rapidly. Kumogakure had begun making contact with the Shadow Island and was slowly stepping into the world of the Quincy. As for Yuki Yoru, he was now operating from Kirigakure, controlling the entire situation. Quietly, he continued refining the rapidly growing spiritual power within him, aiming toward a true evolution. Yet in the corners of the ninja world, some restless figures had already begun to stir. Megakure, Central Tower. Dim light flickered weakly, unable to drive away the eternal gloom and rain of this land. Inside the tower, Obito, Zetsu, Pain, Tendo, Konan, and Uchiha Hikari each sat on solitary chairs, discussing the next phase of a world-shaking plan. The Chunin exams aren't some small-scale event, Konan said sternly. You're not going to invite just Yuki Yoru. The current 5th Hokage Uchiha Fugaku and 4th Raikage are both on Yoru's side. If we act at the venue, we'll be facing not only Yoru, but multiple Kage-level shinobi. Her eyes briefly lingered on the girl with the childlike appearance, Uchiha Hikari, who was currently engrossed in reading modern history of the shinobi world. That risk is too high. Unless we have total assurance, I won't support it. But that's the most direct way to achieve our goal, Obito said with a frown. If we follow your plan, increasing our numbers first, then igniting conflict between nations to make them understand war's cruelty, just the money required would be astronomical. Besides, who knows how strong Yoru will become in the coming years. And his influence is still expanding. Right now is our best chance. Madara. Pain's voice was cold, his purple Rinnegan eyes radiating uncompromising dominance. Konan's concerns are valid. We move only after thorough preparation. I want results, not empty words. The Iron Country incident once was enough. You should understand what I mean. But Madara, I am the leader. Obito's reply caught in his throat. That suffocating frustration burned in his chest, but he could only swallow it, remaining silent as he worked to refine his plan. Even Uchiha Hikari looked a little surprised at the confrontation. Nagato and Obito were never truly of one mind. Though they cooperated closely, their core ideologies diverged. Nagato still held onto the ideals of Yahiko, striving to become the savior, the god who would awaken the world to its cruelty. Beneath the body of Pain the god, even though his broken legs had long since healed, Nagato's heart remained fragile, still the lost child who once wandered through the war-torn Rain Country. Obito was different. He wanted to destroy this world of darkness, slaughter, and despair, completely. I've severed all my foolish bonds with this world, Obito said inwardly. I have the right to become a god now, one who sees beyond even Uchiha Madara. Sunagakure and Kumogakure clashed during the Third War. I won't invite the Raikage. Besides, the Land of Lightning is too far from Suna, they won't act easily. As for Uchiha Fugaku, Obito's voice darkened. Hikari's strength is enough to suppress his Mangekyo Sharingan. He's no threat. Pain gave Hikari a silent glance but did not object. With the Rinnegan, he could feel the terrifying power within the girl's eyes. With her cooperation, their odds of success would indeed skyrocket. But it still wasn't enough. The Akatsuki was desperately short on members and resources. They didn't even have enough to support Amagakure's current needs, let alone execute grand world-altering plans. Obito understood Nagato's implication. I'll provide the funds for the organization's plans. 10 million ryo, delivered tomorrow. Obito's words were steady. But Nagato simply gave a nonchalant grunt and said nothing else. Clearly, he was leveraging the fact that Obito currently controlled Sunagakure. Though aim was poor, Susanoo was rich. Yes, despite its desert location, Sunagakure had become the richest of the 5 great villages. All because of one man, the 4th Kazekage, Raza, who was now under Obito's control. Nicknamed the Golden Miner of the shinobi world, Raza had made a name for himself during the 3rd Great Ninja War in Sunoo's clash with Kumo. After becoming Kazekage, he revived a defeated and nearly ruined village with his gold dust techniques, to the point of crashing gold prices across the entire shinobi world, triggering an economic crisis. He single-handedly resurrected a village through economics. So yes, 10 million ryo was nothing. Money wasn't what Nagato wanted. He wanted people. Other than Konan and me, Pain said calmly, our only active members are Hiriko and Sasori. Even counting Zetsu, that's only 5. His meaning was clear. Obito rubbed his temples. White Zetsu clones were useful, yes, but he still lacked true human assets. But then. I have someone in mind. He's not suited for combat, but... Obito finally pulled a scroll from Kamui's dimension and handed it to Nagato. Nagato opened it, scanning the contents with a raised brow. Shino, former member of the Sky Country. His heart's desire is to revive the Sky Ninja and destroy Konoha. Another soul scarred by Konoha's wars. Obito gave a brief rundown, emphasizing that Shino was a victim of Konoha's conquest. Sure enough, Konan's expression shifted noticeably, and even Pain glanced sideways. Shino's not much of a fighter. At best, he's a standard jonin. But his knowledge of medical ninjutsu and science is outstanding. If we bring him in, he could fill the void left by Orochimaru, and significantly boost AIM's tech development. Where is he now? He's currently in the Land of Grass, Zetsu cut in. If the leader agrees, I can issue an invitation. But if you really want him to join, you might need to visit him personally. I can bring him directly, Obito added. Pain and Konan exchanged glances, clearly intrigued. Right now, the Akatsuki desperately needed personnel, especially a medical scientist. Recruiting Shino could prove a critical turning point. And beyond that, Nagato truly needed the Shikotsumyaku to execute Obito's final plan and achieve a 6-paths level transformation. Very well. Prepare accordingly, Pain said at last. Then his gaze fell on the silent Hikari. Suzaku of the Akatsuki, interested. Hikari looked up at him, calm and unreadable. She didn't like being treated like a tool, but this organization's ideology was at least interesting. She turned to Obito. He frowned slightly, but nodded. Seeing this, Hikari nodded as well. Good. From today forward, you are one of us. The Akatsuki Suzaku. Pain tossed her a ring inscribed with the kanji for Suzaku. Konan handed her a vial of purple nail polish and an official Akatsuki cloak. Akatsuki doesn't control what members do in their free time. As long as you don't betray the organization, you're free to act. However, all members work in pairs. Due to our current numbers, there are 2 unpaired members, you'll choose one to be your partner. Partner. Hikari frowned slightly at the word. Still, she was part of Akatsuki now, and would follow its rules. Obito said nothing more. As long as Nagato stood firm against Yuki Yoru and bought him time, everything would be worth it. Akatsuki Underground Base. 2 figures emerged from the shadows of the corridor. I hear there's a new recruit today, Hiriko said with excitement. Maybe they have a unique Kekkei Genkai. I might finally complete my ultimate masterpiece. Heh. Keep dreaming, Sasori sneered. Your crude fusion techniques aren't art. They're pathetic clown tricks. You. Hiriko froze, furious, but Sasori, sitting inside his puppet body Hiriko, ignored him and continued walking calmly toward the inner sanctum. That disdain made Hiriko's veins bulge. Orochimaru looked down on me. Now Sasori too. None of you geniuses ever took me seriously. But just wait. When I collect all my materials, when I become the perfect ninja, your eternal art will be reduced to dust beneath my feet. Sasori didn't care. The gaze of the weak meant nothing. Soon, both arrived before the ghetto statue, hands folded on its grotesque fingers. Already waiting were Pain, Akatsuki's leader of zero entropy. Konan, White Tiger Angel. Zetsu, Black Turtle. Now joined by Hiriko and Sasori, these made up the entire known Akatsuki roster. Obito had not officially joined, despite cooperating with Nagato. Two matters today, Pain announced from atop the ghetto statue's thumb. First, the addition of a new member. From the shadows, Uchiha Hikari stepped forward, her three-tomo Sharingan glowing crimson as she gazed coldly at Sasori and Hiriko. Hiriko and Sasori both knew her from intel, one a fugitive Konoha medical nin who mastered bloodline fusion, the other, an S-class genius puppet master from Sunagakure. To Hikari, neither posed the slightest threat. Weak. Uninteresting. But while she assessed them, they, too, looked her over. A petite girl, young in age. But those blood-red eyes. Sharingan. Hiriko, a former Konoha nin, was stunned. A girl this young had already awakened a full three-tomo Sharingan. Uchiha Hikari. The Akatsuki Suzaku, Pain said plainly. Hikari, choose your partner. It is our rule, all members act in pairs, to support and monitor each other. I don't babysit kids, Sasori said flatly. She's Uchiha. Let her pair with this guy. TCH. Hiriko scoffed, but didn't object. Instead, his gaze burned with curiosity. So young. So powerful. Personally selected by Pain. If I can use her in my fusion experiments. Chapter 216, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 216. After persuading Nagato and ensuring he had enough strength to keep Yuki Yoru occupied, Obito wasted no time. He headed straight for the Land of Grass, using Zetsu's intel to locate his next target, Shino, a remnant of the now extinct Sky Ninja Village. At this moment, Shino was far from the future villain who would wield the Zero Tails and command flying fortresses. Right now, he was merely a rogue shinobi disguised as a kindly physician, wandering the nations to build goodwill while secretly stealing forbidden techniques from each village to gather strength for a future restoration and revenge. Ever since the Sky Ninja Village had been destroyed decades ago, Shino had made it his life's mission to revive his homeland and destroy Konoha. In a way, he was the Murong Fu of the shinobi world. Shino. Space distorted. Obito stepped out from the vortex, calmly sizing up the men before him. Once certain of his target, he fully revealed himself. Who are you? The unusual arrival made Shino's expression tighten, but he quickly restored his facade of warmth and kindness. However, the moment he saw the blood-red Sharingan behind the swirling mask, his smile froze. That single glance dragged his mind back to the tragedy and despair of 10 years prior. His face stiffened. Am I exposed? No. That can't be. I've been careful, very careful. Even though I've stolen secrets from multiple villages, I've never made any obvious moves. Konoha shouldn't have any intel on me. But there was no mistaking the Sharingan. In this era, under Uchiha Fugaku's rule, Sharingan meant Konoha. You, who are you, really? Shino tried to keep his face composed, quietly activating his sensory abilities. No other chakra signatures nearby. Just him. Even a fully awakened three-tomo Uchiha could be beaten if he went all out. Remnant of the Sky Ninja, Shino. Obito's tone was utterly cold and condescending, exposing Shino's deepest secret with a single breath. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a traveling medic, die. Shino's denial came quickly, but his body moved even faster. With a sudden motion, his hand, coated in Mystic Palm Jutsu, struck at Obito's vital chakra pathways, precise and lethal. But Obito didn't flinch. He stood completely still, his eyes filled with contempt. Shino smirked internally. Arrogant fool. Pay the price for underestimating me, Uchiha. But instead of landing, his strike passed straight through Obito's body. Then space twisted violently, and Obito's form sucked Shino into the void. He had been pulled into the Kamui dimension. That pitch-black, empty world sent a visible jolt through the so-called old fox, his confident mask cracking as panic rose. The Kamui dimension was a closed space. The only way to escape it was either with 6 paths level chakra capable of tearing it apart, or by Kamui itself. Shino had survived 10 years in hiding across many lands, building power and plotting revenge. He was undeniably a brilliant schemer, a true villain. But even for such a man, there was no better way to break him than sealing him in a place of eternal darkness and solitude. At first, Shino kept calm, cautiously watching for any attacks, wary of tricks. But time passed. There was nothing. No ambushes, no exits. Just an endless realm of floating cubic particles. One day passed. Then 2. Then a week. By the end of the first month, Shino was mentally shattered. No. No. Damn you, Uchiha, get out here. I haven't obtained the power of the Zero Tails yet. I haven't taken my revenge on Konoha. I haven't restored Sky Ninja, no. Don't, please, please don't. He had no food. Not even a few ration pills. The only thing keeping him alive was his own chakra reserves, but that couldn't stop the gnawing hunger, the emptiness, the hopelessness. Day by day, his body weakened, and his mind decayed. Eventually, Shino collapsed, staring up at the dim sky, his consciousness slipping into oblivion. And the moment he lost himself, the world shattered like glass. Interesting. Obito stood atop a floating platform, looking down at Shino's collapsed body, caught in the grip of his genjutsu. What had started as psychological torment to subdue the men had revealed something much more interesting. While scanning his memories, Obito discovered some very useful things. Shino's mastery of medical ninjutsu was far beyond expectations. Techniques like body activation and cellular regeneration allowed even an ordinary body to rival that of someone with Hashirama's cells. Properly developed, these methods could be vital to Obito's future plan for Six Paths level fusion. And then there was the Zero Tails. A pseudo-tailed beast that feeds on human darkness to grow endlessly. Not as strong as a Biju, but if I can recreate it, it could be useful. Obito's Sharingan spun slowly. Shino, eyes dull, rose shakily to his feet. Then with a twitch, the light returned to his eyes, but dulled, faded. Like a puppet given life again. Head to Omegakure. I'll help you reclaim the Zero Tails ritual. Yes. The long-awaited peace had blanketed the shinobi world. But Obito soon realized, Konoha was no longer the open playground it used to be. Every major clan had set up new barriers. Even the village gate was now protected by spatial restricting seals, preventing spacetime jutsu users from freely entering or leaving. Even Obito was forced to abandon any stealthy methods. Instead, he used genjutsu on the gatekeepers and strode in through the front entrance. After a brief exploration, he quickly grasped the new state of the village. With the war over, life had gradually returned to normal. Aside from the punishment of a certain old monkey, Konoha's rebuilding was proceeding steadily. Thanks to new alliances with 3 allied nations, industries, infrastructure, and commerce were thriving. Konoha residents walked the streets smiling, though many still spat curses when passing by the Sarutobi clan compound. Even so, their faces were calm and content. This enraged a certain twisted youth watching from the shadows. But then, when he saw those same smiling villagers crying alone in their dark houses at night, he grinned coldly. See. This is reality. This is the despairing truth of the world. War, death, hatred. You smile through the pain, forcing those disgusting fake grins every day, pathetic. Satisfied with the hypocrisy, the hate-filled youth made a brief stop by the Uchiha clan before finally heading, beneath the shroud of night, toward the Sarutobi clan grounds. Once one of the most prosperous clans in Konoha, the Sarutobi still remained in the top tier despite the fall of their former leader. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the former third Hokage, had been publicly tried by Uchiha Fugaku. Though he was cleared of directly colluding with Kimogakure's traitors, he was still condemned by the people of Konoha as a scapegoat for their rage and loss. After being stripped of his title as village elder, he relinquished his role as clan head and retreated into complete isolation. He shut himself in his home, refusing to step outside. For Konoha's ANBU, who were secretly observing him, and for the Sarutobi clan itself, this was a relief. The ANBU feared a cornered Hiruzen might lash out. The clan feared he'd bring them further disgrace. So this self-imposed confinement was ideal, for both sides. The night was dark. The moon veiled in clouds. Inside the house, candlelight flickered. Sarutobi Hiruzen sat at his bedside, staring blankly at the moonlight beyond the window. Just a few years ago, he had stood proudly in the Hokage's office, leading the village with confidence. Now, he was a pariah, the shame of both Konoha and the Sarutobi clan. The shift was staggering, too great to truly accept. A breeze passed through the window, making the candle waver. Suddenly, Hiruzen's dull gaze sharpened. He looked up. Before him, space rippled. Then it twisted into a vortex. A figure began to materialize. A man in a spiral mask and black cloak, a presence everyone in Konoha's upper echelons would recognize immediately. Hiruzen's pupils contracted sharply. You. He instinctively gathered chakra but didn't strike first. The Sarutobi clan's barrier was recently updated. Even spacetime jutsu shouldn't be able to pass through easily. How did you? Foolish tricks. Obito lifted his head slightly. The Mangekyo Sharingan gleamed beneath his mask. Hiruzen fell silent. He had seen this power in Fugaku, and he knew this intruder was beyond simple barriers. Say what you came to say, Hiruzen said bluntly. He had nothing left. Scorned by villagers, loathed by his clan, stripped of all authority, only his strength remained. If this man wasn't here to kill him, then he must want something. Obito glanced around the room, then smirked. How pitiful. Once the longest reigning Hokage, builder of the greatest hidden village, and now you've fallen to this. I have no patience for idle chatter. Tell me, Lord Hokage, Obito said with feigned curiosity, how does it feel to be replaced by the very clan you hated most? Anger. Bitterness. Or, maybe resignation. Ah. I can see it in your eyes already. He chuckled. But sadly, with Yuki Yoru behind them, no matter how much you rage or sulk, you can't change what's happened. You're done, Hiruzen. Your power and status stripped. Soon, it won't just be you. The Sarutobi clan, and even Konoha itself, will fall next. What are you getting at? Have you forgotten who Yuki Yoru truly is? Obito sneered. He's a soul devourer. The more people die, the stronger he gets. Why do you think he allied with Fugaku? Why did he stop the war between Konoha and Kumo? It wasn't peace. It was bait. He's fattening you all up for the slaughter. A little fear, and you all submit. A little kindness, and you praise him as a god. When he finally raises the blade, you'll probably offer your necks willingly. Lies and poison, Hiruzen growled. You're just trying to use me to fight him. Call it lies if you like. But you know it's true. Especially about Yoru. Obito's tone was cold. He was just an elite jonin during the Third Shinobi War. Yet after one war, he rose to the level of the first Hokage. With that kind of growth, plus those freaks from Soul Society, what kind of future do you think this world has? You. Hiruzen clenched his fists. But he couldn't deny it. He had been watching Yuki Yoru's rise for years. A man who surpassed every shinobi in recorded history, in just a few short years. If left unchecked, if given even more time. A chill crept into Hiruzen's heart. Chapter 217, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 217. During the First Great Ninja War, he had been called upon in a time of crisis, entrusted by his teacher, the second Hokage, Senju Tobirama, to inherit the mantle of Hokage. For decades, Sarutobi Hiruzen had ruled with diligence, guiding Konoha forward. Yes, he had his faults, but also many merits. Even now, in his disgraced state, his heart still burned with devotion to Konoha, and to the ideals of his teacher. Though Konoha was now thriving under Uchiha Fugaku's leadership, to Hiruzen, it all seemed laughable. After all, when a village has hit rock bottom, any step forward looks like progress. He remembered what Konoha had been under his reign. Vast military strength. Rich resources. Whether in overall power or international standing, Konoha was the undisputed number one. Even after enduring 2 wars, and being besieged by multiple great nations in both, they had stood tall, never broken. That was his Konoha. Though admittedly, that strength came from the legacy of his predecessors, just like how the Qianlong Emperor couldn't squander everything the Yongjing Emperor had built, no matter how hard he tried. And now. Even with Fugaku's Mangekyo Sharingan, he was still just riding the coattails of Yuki Yoru, bowing to Kirigakure, letting others hold power over life and death. Of course, if that were all, Hiruzen wouldn't be so disturbed. After all, Konoha had clearly weakened. Submitting to greater power wasn't inherently wrong. But the problem was Yuki Yoru's ability. The power to kill and devour souls, and grow stronger with each one. That power was too domineering, too monstrous. With it, Yoru had risen from an ordinary jonin to a being atop the world in just a few years. His strength, his terror, was unimaginable. Yes, for now, Yoru acted friendly toward Konoha. He had formed the Three-Nation Infrastructure Alliance, taken Hyuga Hayashi's daughter as his student, and even voluntarily ended the war between Konoha and Kumo. But in Hiruzen's eyes, all of that only made things worse. He was clearly gradually tightening his grip on Konoha. First by helping Fugaku seize political power. Then by recruiting influential ninja clans through mentorship. And finally, by ending the war to win the hearts of the people. If things kept going at this rate, it wouldn't be long before Konoha became Yuki Yoru's personal playground. And if what Uchiha Obito had said really came to pass, then Konoha would become nothing more than a field of souls, ripe for harvest. I won't let that happen, never. I may no longer be Hokage, but I am still the one who shields Konoha from the storm. Hiruzen muttered quietly, then suddenly looked up at Obito, eyes sharp. I'll cooperate with you to take down Yuki Yoru. Ha 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 ha. Now that is the third Hokage I know, the man once called the God of Shinobi. Obito burst into laughter, clearly unsurprised by the agreement. This old man, so widely revered, hadn't taken up the Hokage title again after Minato's death for no reason. He wasn't someone who could accept failure easily. Nor someone who would just give up power, status, or reputation. Someone who had once held everything, only to lose it all in a few short years, how could he possibly accept such a fall from grace? Obito didn't even need to tempt him. He only had to state the facts, then offer the smallest sliver of opportunity, and Hiruzen would seize it. And that was exactly what happened. So, what's your plan? Hiruzen asked, voice calm but serious. Let me be clear, I will not join any shady organizations, nor do anything that would harm Konoha. Of course, Obito replied with a soft chuckle. Hiruzen's reputation mattered to him. The fact that he had been willing to sign a surrender agreement with Yuki Yoru during the war was already pushing his limits. His current exile wasn't because he lost to Fugaku politically, it was because the entire village, including the Sarutobi clan, had come to loathe him. Hearing Obito's agreement, Hiruzen let out a small breath of relief. He had truly feared being asked to betray the village or join some missing Nin organization. Yoru's power and threat are undeniable, Hiruzen continued. If you don't have a foolproof plan, any move against him will only provoke worse retaliation. That's exactly why I came to you, Obito replied calmly. But with your current frail body, forget Yuki Yoru, even Danzo might be stronger than you. Don't give me that look. Danzo and Fugaku have both successfully fused cells from the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. Hashirama-sensei's cells. Hiruzen's expression darkened. He had known about that research long ago, had even been involved. He had once taken the first's only viable living clone, Kino, away from Danzo himself. But now, both Danzo and Fugaku had successfully integrated Hashirama's cells. What are you proposing? Hiruzen asked darkly. I have no resources, no power, and no access to anything anymore. And if I recall correctly, you also possess the first cells, don't you? Indeed. I wield Hashirama's strength too. But even that isn't enough to defeat Yoru. To do that, we need a higher level of power. Higher. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed. Do you remember a shinobi named Hiriko? Obito pulled a scroll from his robes, the scroll of the Chimera technique, and tossed it over. Hiruzen opened it and studied the contents. His already pale brows furrowed deeply. After a long silence, he lowered the scroll. I've known of this jutsu for a long time. It was because of his research into these taboos that Hiriko was declared rogue and ordered hunted by my command. You're not seriously suggesting I use this, are you? As expected of the ninjutsu professor, you're sharp, Obito nodded. Yes, I am suggesting that. After Hiriko defected, he refined this jutsu even further. And with my modifications, it's now fully optimized. With Senju cells and Uchiha Sharingan, you can replicate the power of the Sage of Six Paths. Fugaku and Danzo possess both components. That's why their power is so overwhelming. But even they have only scratched the surface. These two powers are wild and unstable. Ordinary people can't handle them, only through extensive modification or rare compatibility can one survive the fusion. However, this Chimera technique allows for deep fusion. Obito fixed Hiruzen with a heavy gaze. I assume you still have some of Hashirama's cells. Then all you need is a compatible Uchiha. You want me to go to war with Fugaku? Hiruzen snapped. Forget it. I won't touch Uchiha blood. That is my line. Whether it was his old friend Uchiha Kagami, or the teachings of his mentor, Hiruzen had always held complex emotions about the Uchiha. He had known of Danzo's experiments with both Uchiha and Senju bloodlines long ago, never doubt a Hokage's awareness of his village. Especially when the one experimenting was his so-called closest friend. He had felt the changes in Danzo's chakra, had sensed the unnatural power from the mingled blood. But even then, Hiruzen had never dared to take that step himself. Because to him, the Uchiha and Senju clans occupied sacred places in Konoha's legacy. Still clinging to the honor of your predecessors? Obito scoffed, but didn't push further. Instead, he said, then perhaps we try a different recipe. Different? Yes. One that can also lead to the Six Paths realm. Uzumaki. Hyuga. Shikotsumyaku. Obito's body slowly vanished into a space-time vortex, leaving behind only a single scroll on the table. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. The gentle night breeze stirred the paper. He tapped the table rhythmically, thinking. Konoha had never lacked forbidden jutsu. He had ruled for over 3 decades. As the so-called ninjutsu professor, he had studied nearly every technique in the village, including countless forbidden ones. He had researched the Chimera technique before. And now, with Obito's so-called upgraded version, he saw something different. He didn't even need to test it. With just a glance, his experience told him that this was a terrifying jutsu. A technique capable of breaking through bottlenecks and elevating the body to new heights. Bloodline fusion. Reversion to ancient lineage. The potential was immense. But it also carried horrific risks. This kind of bloodline integration destabilized one's very foundation. Failure could lead to irreversible damage. For someone who wanted to someday step back into the light, to protect Konoha again, that price was too great. But if it were someone who already lived in darkness? Someone. Hiruzen formed a hand seal and gave a quiet order. A figure appeared behind him. Lord Hiruzen. Bring Danzo to me. Yes. As for this move of Hiruzen's, Obito wasn't particularly concerned. If the old man could produce some chaos and cause Yuki Yoru even minor trouble, all the better. If not, no big deal. He already had the Zero Tails ritual in hand. Somewhere in the forests of Konoha. Sharingan Windmill Triple Attack. Fire Style, Great Fire Dragon Jutsu. A massive flame roared out, riding along steel wires, lighting up the clearing as it spiraled through the trees. After unleashing the technique, Uchiha Itachi dropped to one knee, panting hard, but quickly stood again and resumed throwing shuriken at distant targets. Up in a tall tree nearby, Obito stood on a branch, watching silently. He's definitely a genius. From the trunk beside him, half of Zetsu emerged and nodded. This is Uchiha Itachi, Fugaku's son. Opened the Sharingan early. Said to be even more talented than Shisui. Right now, he's the most outstanding prodigy in the Uchiha clan. And his personality is unusual. If guided well, he has high potential to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan. As Akatsuki's top scout, Zetsu's sensory skills were among the best in the shinobi world. With Black Zetsu riding shotgun, every Uchiha was under surveillance from the moment of birth. And Itachi, who had shown talent from the start, had been a top priority since day one. A genius, huh? Something stirred in Obito's memories. His visible Sharingan flickered with emotion. His tone remained cold. But talent alone won't awaken the Mangekyo. You need enough hatred. Only intense emotion could trigger that evolution. Obito knew this well. Everything he had seen, everything he had experienced that day, it still haunted him. It was that grief, that rage, that had awakened his own Mangekyo. The deeper the love, the more powerful the hatred that follows. That's the curse buried deep in Uchiha blood. Does he love anything, or anyone? Hiruzen's will of fire, maybe. White Zetsu offered with a snort. But under Obito's glare, he quickly changed his answer. Besides his parents, Fugaku and Mikoto, the only one he really cares about is his younger brother. Oh, and he has a childhood sweetheart he's very close to. Oh. Obito's eyes lit up with interest. A childhood sweetheart. Now that is useful. Chapter 218, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 218. Upon hearing Zetsu's report, Obito immediately envisioned 1,000 twisted, ritualistic ways to sacrifice that childhood sweetheart. Yes. No one understands childhood sweethearts better than me, Uchiha Obito. Only those who've stood in the rain know how best to shred someone else's umbrella. But the more Obito dug into Itachi's intelligence report, the less confident he felt. Uchiha Itachi. A prodigious youth of the Uchiha clan. Son of the 5th Hokage, Uchiha Fugaku. At age 4, he was taken by his father into the Third Great Ninja War. He personally witnessed combat, and even killed an Iwagakure genin. At 6, upon learning that Konoha was cooperating with Kirigakure, a village notorious for slaughtering its own shinobi, he became emotionally agitated and awakened the Sharingan. A few years later, during his father's successful Hokage campaign, he awakened his 2-tomo Sharingan out of pure excitement. And earlier this year, when Sarutobi Hiruzen was captured and publicly tried by Fugaku, the emotional shock pushed him to awaken the 3-tomo Sharingan. Obito furrowed his brow the more he read. A 3-tomo Sharingan at only 9 years old, an achievement that, even throughout Uchiha history, was vanishingly rare. But the real problem was how he awakened it. He awakened his eye not from clan loyalty or personal trauma, but from a desire to protect the village. He felt anguish when he learned of Konoha's collaboration with murderers from Kirigakure. He awakened again from joy when his father brought honor to the Uchiha as Hokage. And again when he saw a beloved symbol of the village, the 3rd Hokage, publicly disgraced and his ideals shattered. Bro, how are all your Sharingan awakenings about the village and not your clan or yourself? Are you even a real Uchiha? Obito twitched at the mouth. He looked as if he'd just stumbled upon some truly monstrous anomaly. The Uchiha were a clan of overwhelming love, a love so deep and intense that, when twisted, gave rise to unimaginable power. Looking back over the clan's century-long history, some Uchiha loved their brothers and their dreams. Some loved family and ambition. Others loved romance and friendship. But a Uchiha who put the village above all else. Itachi was the first of his kind. Judging by this intel, said Black Zetsu, simply targeting his childhood sweetheart may not provoke enough emotional backlash to trigger further evolution. If you want a true explosion of emotion, you'll need to go further. Besides, with Yuki Yoru overseeing Konoha, and Fugaku wielding Mangekyo, the village is practically impenetrable. Obito nodded. Forget it. Let's focus on acquiring the Shikotsumyaku bloodline first. Whether it was Sarutobi Hiruzen, Uchiha Itachi, or anyone else, everything ultimately served his grand plan. If he could seize the Shikotsumyaku, the rest of these contingencies would become irrelevant. Let's move. Time to execute the next phase. Understood. At Iwagakure. An invitation to a joint Chunin exam from Sunagakure. In his office, Inoki frowned deeply as he read the scroll. Under normal circumstances, the Chunin exams didn't need participation from other villages. But once outsiders were invited, the event transformed from an internal promotion system into a stage for diplomatic muscle flexing. Essentially, a show of power. Just like in the original timeline when Naruto and Sasuke attended the joint exams, the primary goal was to flaunt Konoha's dominance and observe rival villages. But now, aside from their little brother, Suna, none of the other major villages had shown any intention of attending. In canon, Kirigakure was still recovering from the blood mist years, and Kumo-gakure and Iwagakure couldn't care less about giving Konoha a platform. The Third War had only ended a few years ago. For Sunagakure, a defeated nation, to suddenly initiate a multi-village exam. That raised eyebrows. Was this a way to probe the progress of other great nations, and maybe trigger another war? Inoki stared at the intelligence report with complicated eyes. This situation was tricky, particularly because of timing. Attending or not attending both carried political consequences. If they declined, people would start speculating. And if other nations sent their elites, Sunagakure could end up in real trouble. If the other four great nations deployed strong genin and coordinated efforts, it could overwhelm Suna entirely. The village still needs the third Tsuchikage to stay put, someone advised. We performed terribly in the Third War. If we don't show up now, the other villages will think we're weak. We don't need the Tsuchikage himself, but the team we send must be elite. We need to restore Iwa's prestige. But what if we suffer losses? You all know how fragile our situation is. Suna took just as much damage as we did. There's no way they've recovered this quickly. Something's off. That's true, but if we refuse, we'll look even worse. Inoki remained silent as his advisors bickered furiously. Finally, he spoke. Enough. You're all correct. Sunagakure clearly has something up its sleeve, but this is an open strategy. They've mimicked the old blood mist policies and adopted a blood sand doctrine. We don't yet know how effective it's been, but the fact they dare to host joint exams now means every village will send someone. If only to scout for intel. In terms of diplomacy and intelligence, we can't fall behind. Let's send Deidara, Kuratsuchi, and Kitsuchi. Have Kitsuchi lead the team and find out what Sunagakure is really up to. Understood. Kumo-gakure. Spiritual simulation, lightning release, Black Panther. In a secluded training ground near a waterfall, Darui's closed eyes snapped open. Inside his body, the Ryuryoku he had learned to convert on Shadow Island suddenly erupted. The lightning tattoo on his shoulder gleamed brilliantly, as if a monstrous power were gathering within him. A moment later, a pitch-black lightning panther exploded from his hand with a feral snarl, launching straight toward the waterfall. The next instant, the entire waterfall was split in two, shattered by the surge of black lightning that spread in all directions. What the hell was that? Standing nearby, a blonde-haired shinobi who resembled the fourth Hokage, stared in disbelief. His mind was filled with the image of that black thunderbeast, a brutal, roaring predator born of lightning. No doubt about it. That was the third Raikage signature jutsu, Black Lightning. Darui, you pulled it off. Was it because of Ryuryoku? Asked Samui, crossing her arms over her impressive chest, golden hair shining in the sunlight. Her eyes sparkled with awe. Yeah, it's because of Ryuryoku, Darui replied, exhaling deeply as he recovered. After converting all my chakra into Ryuryoku, techniques I used to struggle with now flow like water. Even the third Raikage's Black Lightning, I can control it now. And it's not just that, even my Kekkei Genkai seemed stronger. What? Both C and Samui were visibly shaken. They already knew that Ryuryoku gave a huge boost to ninjutsu. After all, everyone chosen as successors of Shadow Island had seen dramatic improvements. But they hadn't expected that even Kekkei Genkai could be enhanced this way. Just how powerful was Ryuryoku? Yo-Yo looks like Darui completed an incredible training, just like the spicy stir-fried noodles I just ate, Baka Yaro, Kanayaro. With that overly enthusiastic rap verse, a new figure descended. Killer Bee landed flamboyantly, half covering his mouth and striking a pose before pausing at the sight of the split waterfall. Lord B. B-sama. The three greeted him with deep respect. Killer Bee wasn't just a powerful shinobi, he was one of the pillars of Kumo-gakure, a man worthy of reverence. Honestly, it's all thanks to Ryuryoku. I haven't even trained that hard, Darui said lazily, stretching. It might be worth asking the fourth to authorize widespread training access. What do you think, B-sama? You lazy brat, humph, the higher-ups will handle those things. You have a new mission, Baka Yaro, Kanayaro. With another twirl and a 360-degree spin, Killer Bee tossed a scroll. Samui caught it smoothly. She opened it, and her sharp eyes immediately narrowed in confusion. Chunin exams. Yeah, Chunin exams, baby, be wrapped. Time to flex those muscles, show MR might, win those promotions, and crush the fight. The three exchanged glances, faces twitching. Chunin. Please, they were all beyond that. Most jonin in the village couldn't beat them. And they were being sent to take a promotion exam. But they understood. Kumohagakure hadn't secured a decisive victory in the Third War, or even in their final conflict with Konoha. And now that Yuki Yoru had brokered peace across the nations, future wars were unlikely. If they wanted to reclaim face, this Chunin exam was the perfect stage. TCH, what a pain. Darui muttered. He was the strongest of the three, having mastered a technique even the fourth Raikage hadn't, Black Lightning. But he was also the most laid back. Lying around, cloud-gazing, that was his preferred hobby. The recent Ryuryoku conversion had drained him, and now they were dragging him into another event. Don't worry, Bisama, said C solemnly as he accepted the scroll. We'll make sure the world sees the might of Kumohagakure. That's what I'm talking about. Chunin exams. In the Mizukage's office, Yuki Yoru raised an eyebrow at the invitation, genuinely intrigued. He already knew that Sunagakure was Obito's base of operations. He'd discovered that through monitoring microbes shortly after the war ended. Yoru wasn't yet at the peak of his power. And before he spread Ryuryoku across the entire shinobi world, he didn't mind playing Obito's games. It was mildly entertaining, and would keep certain figures in the Pure Land from getting suspicious. He'd originally thought that after Konoha and Kumo's conflict ended, the world would transition to the Asura vs. Indra reincarnation war. But now, it seemed Obito was growing restless. So, you're inviting me personally? Planning to trap me in Suna permanently, are you? Yoru twirled the invitation scroll in his hand, eyes glinting with amusement. You're even willing to risk exposing Sunagakure, oi, you little punk. You're actually getting me a little fired up. Are you really planning to go? Asked his secretary, Terumi Mei, who was helping sort papers. Sunagakure is part of the infrastructure alliance with us. They sent an invite, how could I not go? Yoru shrugged, stretching lazily. Besides, I've been stuck in the village forever. Let's call it a vacation, clear the mind, stretch the legs. Mei twitched at the corner of her mouth. She and Yukikiri did most of the paperwork. Village affairs were handled by others too. Meanwhile, this guy, who treated himself like a hands-off ruler, barely did anything except design a few fancy Quincy's blut. What about your escort? I meant the guards. Who are you taking with you? Yoru looked at Mei clinging close to him and gave a helpless smile. Kiri's going to complain again. Fine, I'll take you. And since it's Sunagakure, let's bring Pakura too. Chapter 219, Strongest Hidden Mist Village, 219. The Mizukage's journey was a grand affair, especially since it was a formal invitation from another hidden village. As Yoru had predicted, just by bringing Terumi Mei along, Yukikiri was bound to get a bit sulky. Still, there were plenty within the village deeply curious about the upcoming Chunin exams. Even though Yoru openly warned them that Sunagakure's environment was harsh, with poor climate and grueling conditions, many still signed up eagerly for the trip. Even researchers like Yukiko and Hiromi expressed interest in tagging along for a change of pace. After much back and forth, Yoru finally finalized the list of companions. Though Kirigakure was quite far from Sunagakure, the group treated the journey like a full-fledged vacation. First came a leisurely cruise by sea, then a short trek through the land of hot springs, and finally, switching to carriages once they crossed into the land of fire, slowly making their way to the land of wind. What should have been a week-long journey stretched out to nearly a month, with the group enjoying the unique sights and flavors of each country they passed through. Naturally, they encountered shinobi from other villages along the way, mostly from minor villages, all heading toward the Chunin exams just like them. Yoru's group made no attempt to announce their identities. They simply acted like curious travelers, sightseeing and relaxing. Well, this applied only to Yoru's group. The actual genin team led by Kisame Hoshigaki, including Zabuza, remained fully focused on their training the entire trip. A month later, the party finally crossed into the land of wind. The land was shrouded in constant sandstorms and wasteland. Even with the joint infrastructure efforts over the past few years, the vast stretches of desert were still overwhelming. The scattered development was a mere drop in the bucket compared to the sea of sand. However, the cities within the land of wind were mostly built around oases. Sunagakure itself was situated atop the largest of them. The village was relatively protected from the worst of the sandstorms. By the time Yoru and his party casually arrived at Sunagakure, 4th Kazekage Raza had already been waiting outside the village, flanked by Chiyo, high-ranking Suna officials, a host of Suna shinobi, and even some curious foreign ninja. After all, this wasn't just anyone, they were here to greet Yuki Yoru, the fourth Mizukage of Kirigakure. The men hailed as the strongest in the current shinobi world, and an idol to the younger generation. Everyone wanted to see what kind of man he truly was. Returning to your homeland, does it feel any different? Inside the carriage, Yoru's head was resting in Mei's lap, his face relaxed as he glanced at Pakura nearby. You know, you were once a contender for the title of fourth Kazekage. Did you ever imagine things would turn out like this? Shut up. Pakura shot him an embarrassed glare as she adjusted her slightly disheveled clothing. Sunagakure's political climate back then was complicated. She had indeed been a top-tier candidate, capable of rivaling Raza. But due to certain special reasons, not only did she lose the candidacy, she had been cast aside entirely by the village. Pakura no longer cared to dwell on the past. That was the game of politics, after all. She simply hadn't been suited for it. But meeting Yuki Yoru had opened up an entirely different path for her. Welcome, fourth Mizukage. Before anyone even stepped out, Raza was already approaching with a bright smile. As the carriage curtains were lifted by Mei, Yoru emerged, donning the white Mizukage cloak and formal hat. That's the Mizukage. Whoa, so young, and hot. I can't sense anything from him at all. Is he really the strongest in the shinobi world? Damn. That's what I'd look like if I were handsome. Countless eyes locked onto Yoru, necks craned. Raza smiled warmly, but when his eyes met the expressionless Pakura behind Yoru, he froze momentarily before quickly recovering. Mizukage-sama, so young and accomplished. With your presence, this Chunin exam will surely be one for the history books. Ha ha ha, Kazekage-sama flatters me. Yoru, grinning, stepped off the carriage, arm hooked around Mei's. To single-handedly support a village like Sunagakure, you are the real hero, Kazekage-sama. No, compared to you, Mizukage-sama, I can hardly be called that. Nonsense. You praise me too much. The two of them exchanged smiling formalities as they entered the village, their easy demeanor stunning many of the Suna shinobi and causing the high-ranking officials to frown thoughtfully. The strongest men in the world, yet so modest. With such temperament and strength combined, the future of Kirigakure under Yuki Yoru's leadership was frightening to imagine. Especially considering how far Kirigakure had already advanced. Compared to them, Sunagakure was still trapped in the outdated systems of the old Kirigakure. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. How could they possibly catch up? And yet, Chiyo, Ebizo, and the others all turned their gazes to Pakura, who walked silently behind the two Kage. Once the village's top combat asset, now a member of Kirigakure, and brought here personally by Yoru. Pakura walked calmly, holding her head high, meeting their stares directly. Ebizo seemed as if he wanted to say something, but Pakura simply followed behind Yoru without a word, leaving them with the elegant curve of her back. This. It is what it is, Chiyo murmured, sighing. Perhaps this is karma. Back during the political transition, they had chosen Raza over Pakura, and now the consequences stood before them in full. Make sure Baki keeps everything under control, Chiyo instructed. There are too many outsiders in the village. We can't afford any incidents. Understood. The welcome ceremony was executed with full honors. After all, this was a diplomatic visit between two major powers. Sunagakure rolled out the red carpet for Yoru's group. Later that day, Raza personally arranged their accommodations in Sunagakure's most luxurious inn, and also went over the upcoming exam schedule and rules. Incidentally, Uchiha Fugaku was staying in the neighboring building. Since Konoha was geographically closer to Sunagakure, and because Yoru had spent a month sightseeing, Fugaku and his group had arrived long ago. Now, there were only 3 days left until the start of the Chunin exams. Mizukage-sama, Raza said, laying a scroll on the table. This joint Chunin exam is meant to promote inter-village cooperation, peaceful development, and mutual growth. We hope your shinobi will perform well. Thank you, Kazekage-sama. Pakura, please see our guest out. Yes. Yoru took the scroll with a smile and gestured. Pakura, face blank, looked at Raza. This way, Kazekage-sama. Ah, yes. Once they had left, Mei opened the scroll, curious to see the exam structure. Compared to the original exam taken by Naruto and Sasuke, this one, held under Suna's blood sand policy, was far more brutal. There was no written test at all. It was divided into 3 stages. Stage 1, a Forest of Death style survival battle. Stage 2, team versus team combat. Stage 3, one-on-one duels. It was a comprehensive and harsh exam, testing both individual strength and teamwork. This won't be easy. I saw some strong shinobi from the other villages today, Mei muttered, setting down the scroll. I'm not sure Zabuza's team can even win. Yoru, casually nibbling on Suna's local sweets, was unconcerned. You're surprisingly relaxed. Aren't you worried? You're the Mizukage. If our shinobi get crushed in front of everyone, we'll be a laughingstock. You have to have faith in the kids, Yoru replied calmly. He lifted a sand cookie to her lips. Besides, instead of worrying about them, you should enjoy this rare change of scenery. Might not get another chance like this. Mei frowned slightly, surprised. Wait, you mean, they wouldn't dare do anything with you here, would they? Exactly. Because I'm here. Yoru smiled faintly. His spiritual perception had already locked onto a number of interesting individuals in the village. There was no doubt, the real main character of this exam wasn't the hopeful genin aiming for promotion. It was him, the fourth Mizukage. Tell Kisame to make sure the kids are fully prepared. I'm heading out for a bit. Ah, okay. Yoru vanished from sight. Mei paused, then simply shook her head. Others might not know the full extent of Yoru's power, but as his personal secretary, she did. She didn't know exactly how strong Hashirama or Madara had been, only that they had been titans who ended the Warring States era and founded the hidden villages. But Yoru. To her, he had long since surpassed the limits of a shinobi or even a human being. He stood at the level of a sage of six paths. Meanwhile, in Sunagakure, due to the proximity between the land of rain and the land of wind, and with Obito giving them advance notice, Nagato and his group had already arrived. But rather than setting traps or engaging in covert sabotage, they instead blended in quietly, observing the state of the village firsthand. Nagato had only just learned that Sunagakure was under Obito's control. While surprised by the scale of Obito's plan, he was curious what kind of village this so-called Uchiha Madara had built under his banner of peace. Unfortunately, the reality was bitterly disappointing. It only took a few days for Nagato to become disillusioned. Blood sand policy, using brutal selection and merciless education to forge true shinobi from sand and grit. What a stupid system. You have someone like Raza, a top-tier ninja, and still you manage to run the village into the ground. No wonder Hashirama became the first Hokage instead of Madara. If Obito had absolute genjutsu control over the village, why not copy Kirigakure's current policies? Why revert to something that even Kirigakure itself had discarded? Because that kind of system suits him perfectly, said Konan, sitting across from Nagato in a cozy food stall serving wind country delicacies. If the village under his control looked anything like Konoha, or the new Kirigakure, that would be strange. True enough, Nagato nodded. Based on the memories he had extracted from several Suna Jonin, after the Third Great War, Sunagakure's crushing defeat had led to the Land of Wind's daimyo slashing their funding. Even with Raza, the golden ninja of gold dust, a lack of budget meant development was crippled. Combine that with exploitative alliances from Konoha and Kirigakure, and the high-pressure blood sand system almost made sense. Why didn't Obito just control the daimyo too? Because, as every ninja knew, you don't touch the nobles, even if you burn the world down. Such a pitiful, miserable village. Nagato stared out at the street, watching Suna's downtrodden citizens rush about, their expressions filled with weariness and despair. His Rinnegan, glowing faintly beneath crimson hair, flickered with cold light, reminding him of the Rain village under Hanzo's iron rule. The same oppression. The same hopelessness. The same absence of a future. After a while, he turned away. Where's Hikari? Wandering the village, Konan replied. She seems fascinated with the local life. She remembered how excited the little girl had looked when they first arrived, completely different from her usual demeanor. A curious, wide-eyed child. Then again. She was just a child. Konan still had no idea where Obito had dug her up from. Bring her back, Nagato said grimly. Yuki Yoru just arrived in the village. We can't afford any surprises. His eyes darkened as memories of the Iron Country battle surged back. He had burned nearly everything in that fight, summoning the Geto statue, pouring out his life force. And still, Yoru had crushed him. That overwhelming defeat. The humiliation of being knocked off his pedestal. Those eyes, full of disdain and ridicule. This time. I'll show you the true power of a god, Yuki Yoru.